Good morning.
Good morning. Music.
Good morning to all. I'm Dr. Rina Francis, the host of today's one-day webinar on improving the quality of research and creation of new knowledge, strategies for improving research culture, organized by Internal Quality Assurance Cell of St. Philomena's College, Mysore. I wholeheartedly welcome each one of you to this webinar. The word research evolved from French word recherche, meaning to examine something thoroughly. Educational research includes experimental and quasi-experimental research, as well as qualitative, descriptive, and correlation studies. Scientifically based research involves systematic methods that draw on careful observation or experimentation that makes valid, credible, reliable, and trustworthy conclusions. Research is imperative as it is a way of responding to societal priorities. It enables derived knowledge. It is a means of preserving, fabricating, and resynthesizing existing knowledge and for creating new knowledge. It aids in building a knowledge society, and it is a vital pillar for higher education. According to Ms. Nita, education and research play a prominent role in the creation, dissemination, and use of knowledge. They form an important foundation for innovation at all levels, which in turn drives the economic, social, cultural development of a country. Hence, research is creating new knowledge, and we believe that the common facts of today are the products of yesterday's research. Now, I request Dr. Alphonsus de Souza, Associate Professor and Coordinator of Research Committee, to welcome the gathering and throw some light on the relevance of this webinar. Over to you, sir.
Bright morning to one and all. Respected dignitaries, special invitees, esteemed colleagues in the profession, and my dear students. It is a pleasure and privilege to welcome all of you to the inaugural program of this one-day webinar on improving the quality of research and creation of new knowledge, strategies for improving research culture, organized by Internal Quality Assurance Cell in association with Research Committee of this college. Higher education is the backbone of any society. It is the quality of higher education that decides the quality of human resources in the country. Research in any discipline of thought is an ongoing process of enhancing the existing fund of knowledge by exploring new frontiers that challenge the human quest for understanding reality. The question of quality of research underscores whether the research in any branch enriches knowledge ecosystem in a significant manner. The question of the quality of research has become the center of academic, professional, and higher education policy debates all over the world. Today's webinar is organized with objectives. Number one, to be at par with other institutes in terms of research, publications, and patents for righteous and innovative research. Number two, to conduct research on current trends in the field of arts, science, commerce, management, languages, and through innovative teaching methods invoke interest among prospective researchers. The existing research cultures need to be revamped to cater to the current scenario. Number 3, to train faculty members who can lead and mentor research scholars, PG students and UG students to carry on research of relevance. Number 4, to establish research laboratories that can bridge the gap between academics and industry. On this special occasion, I take immense pleasure to welcome our chief guest, Professor Yashwant Dongre, former Vice Chancellor in charge, University of Mysore, and Director, Planning, Monitoring and Evaluation Board, University of Mysore, and at present Chairman of Subcommittee, New Education Policy, Government of Karnataka. So, your presence today is a pleasure. On behalf of Philo's family, extend a cordial welcome to you, dear sir. I also extend a warm welcome to today's resource persons, Dr. Prema Kumara GS, Coordinator and Professor, Department of Economics, Sir MV PG Center, University of Mysore, Tubinakere, Manda District, and Mr. Ravishankar BS, Informatics, Bangalore. Warm welcome to you, dear sirs. Reverend Dr. Bernard Prakash Barnis, Rector Manager of St. Philomena's Institutions, is a source of inspiration to all of us. He always wholeheartedly supports all our endeavors. On behalf of everyone, extend a warm welcome to your father. I am very happy to welcome our beloved Vice Rector, Reverend Father Maria Xavier, Campus Administrator, Reverend Father John Paul, who are always showing keen interest in the welfare of the college. A warm welcome to dear fathers. I am glad to welcome our Principal, Dr. Ruth Shantakumari, who is an inspiring spirit behind all the activities of the college. Welcome you, Madam. On behalf of everyone present, I extend a cordial welcome to PG Director Professor Albert Pinto, Vice Principal Professor Sanjay Nair, Controller of Examination Professor Brito. Welcome you, sirs. I am glad to welcome IQAC Coordinator Ronald Prakash Coutinho, who is the brain behind this webinar. On behalf of everyone present here, I render a warm welcome you to sir. Learning uses creativity. Creativity leads to thinking. Thinking provides knowledge. Knowledge makes you great is a quotation given by Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam, well suits to all the teachers of these institutions who are the strong pillars of this great institution. On behalf of everyone present here, I welcome you all wholeheartedly. The Chinese proverb says, learning is treasure that will follow its owner everywhere. I extend a cordial welcome to all student delegates who have gathered to learn more about search and research. Welcome you one and all. Thank you. Have a fruitful day.
Thank you, sir, for welcoming all and briefing us about the importance of today's webinar. May I now request our Principal, Dr. Ruth Shantakumari, to deliver the inaugural address.
A wonderful morning to one and all associated with this one-day webinar in connection with strategies for improving research culture. We understand that human beings from time immemorial are researchers because of the innate quality called curiosity, ability to observe, ability to analyze the observations and concluding. So these are the qualities which human beings possess, and thereby they all are, or every human being has got a potential to become a researcher if these domains are used towards that point. Why do we want to have research? Studies indicate that in comparison to the population of the country, India is still not faring very well in terms of research and publications. We stand as per a study in 2015, in the 5th place as far as publications are concerned. US, China, UK, and Germany, a very, very small country, these countries are leading, they are ahead of India in terms of publications. And studies also indicate that by 2030, hopefully, India will occupy 3rd position in terms of publications. But unfortunately, we still find that Indian universities, Indian higher educational institutions, including Indian Institute of Science, one of the premier institutions of the country, do not appear in university ranking globally before 500. Indian Institute of Science falls in the band of 501 to 600. That's the place. Why is this so? Because institutions of higher education have a responsibility. One side, we have to enhance the enrollment ratio, making education accessible, making educational opportunities available to all sectors of society. But at the same time, maintaining quality is a mandate for institutions of higher education. And quality publications, quality research, quality education, quality syllabus, all these are expectations from a reputed institution of higher education. And thereby, we have a major responsibility. All the higher education institutions have a major responsibility to inculcate a research culture in the institutions, in the higher educational institutions. How do we create a research ecosystem? Is research meant only for researchers after post-graduation studies? Is research only meant for publications, number of publications? In addition to quantity of or number of publications, I think even quality matters a lot. What kind of research has to take place? If the research you conduct in the institutions of higher education does not have any impact on improvising, enhancing the quality of life in the society, in the nearby community, if it does not enhance the ease of living for the wildlife, the organisms around us, if it does not enhance the quality of environment, the air, the water, the soil around us, the life-supporting issues, then that research doesn't carry any meaning. Hence, we have to decide what quality of research has to take place. We also have the responsibility of increasing the quantity of publications. And hence, an institution of higher education has an ongoing, a constantly pressing need for cultivating research culture. And in this connection, the research committee of St. Philomena's College, in association with the Internal Quality Assurance Cell, is conducting a one-day webinar on strategies for improving research culture. I was just telling, is research meant for only researchers? It's absolutely not. Research is a quality which is hidden even in a small child. A small child asks his mother, why an ant has 6 legs, not 8, not 4? That shows every child has got a researcher in him or her. The problem is the present education system is not catering to grow or enhance that curiosity, that ability to question, ability to inquire into the realities of our surrounding world. And that is why higher education institutions have to understand this need of the hour very importantly, very immediately. If at all every teacher understands the urgency, the need of inculcating and improvising or refining this ability to question, this curiosity and inquiring, in every student. That is actual research. We have to take care of our undergraduate students, our postgraduate students also, and tell them what is the importance of research. Research has to be the agent or be the medium of transferring the knowledge a student acquires in the classroom into the land, into the surrounding community to improvise, to improve, to enhance the quality of their life. In this connection, I must congratulate the faculty members who are involved in this webinar, the IQAC, which has taken an initiative, a step to encourage teachers to go through this or work for this webinar. And I hope at the end of the day, our teachers, who are the major stakeholders of this webinar, one-day webinar, will realize the need of inculcating research mentality, research temperament among the students. If at all an undergraduate student asks the same kind of questions with the intensity of curiosity as a small child, even now, then you have successfully inculcated that research culture in the institution, in the minds of the students. And there, our responsibility as teachers, as mentors, as researchers, as guides is clearly defined. I wish that all the members of the faculty of St. Philomena's College who are attending this webinar will realize this and will refine their skills to be better guides for their students by the end of the day. And I hope and wish that the research ecosystem in St. Philomena's College, one of the most prominent institutions in the state of Karnataka, and thereby the college, the institution rises above the present level, goes to a higher glory. I wish all the participants all the very best. I once again congratulate the organizing team of this one-day webinar and hope that these few hours you spent today will be productive for the students, for the faculty members, for the institution also. Thank you, one and all.
Thank you, Madam, for your encouraging words, which will definitely take us forward to attain the set objectives of this webinar. Having set the objectives of this webinar, let us all join together to make this webinar a very meaningful and a fruitful one. A culture of research is a system that places great values on conducting and communicating scholarly research. According to Andrew of the University of Western Sydney, Australia, the research culture is the structure that gives significance and that allows us to understand and evaluate the research activity. According to Albert Sent, research is to see what everybody else has seen and to think what nobody else has thought. With this quote, let us begin our first session for the day by Professor Yashwant Dongre, who will be the speaker on the topic Strategies for Improving Research Culture. Now, I request Dr. Sunil D'Souza, Assistant Professor, Department of Commerce, to introduce Dr. Yashwant Dongre.
Thank you, madam. As a commerce teacher, I feel great and proud to introduce a great teacher of commerce and today's resource person for our one-day webinar. Professor Yashwant Dongre holds a PhD in commerce and has served as Professor of Commerce and Director, Planning, Monitoring and Evaluation Board at the University of Mysore, India. After superannuating from this position, he is serving as research and accreditation consultant at the same university. Professor Dongre has held many administrative positions that include Director of Postgraduate Center, Dean of the Faculty, Registrar of the University, and Acting Vice Chancellor of the University. Dr. Dongre did his postdoctoral research at Ritsumeikan University, Kyoto, Japan during 1992-93 and 2000-2001. He was a visiting overseas researcher at a graduate university for advanced studies, Osaka, Japan, during 2008-9, and a Japan Foundation Fellow at University of Tokyo during 2013-14. Third sector, consisting of nonprofits, cooperatives, and social businesses, are the areas of research interest for Professor Dongre. He has handled many major research projects in these areas, including those funded by international organizations like Ford Foundation, University of Technology, Sydney, Asia Pacific Philanthropy Consortium, Philippines, and Supraja Foundations, Hong Kong. He has published over 100 articles in national and international journals and magazines. He has also published 8 edited books and written widely both in English and Kannada newspaper. Professor Dongre served as a consultant to the high-powered committee on cooperatives set up by the Ministry of Agriculture, Government of India, the recommendations of which paved the way for the 97th constitutional amendment in 2012. Dr. Dongre is actively involved in the activities of the International Cooperative Alliance Asia Pacific Research Committee. He served as the co-secretary of ICAAP Committee on Cooperatives in Educational Institutions ever since its inception. At present, he is serving as the chairman of a subcommittee constituted by the Task Force on Implementation of New Education Policy in Karnataka State. A warm welcome to you, sir, to St. Philomena's College. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, and a very good morning to all of you. Let me, I think, first share my PowerPoint. 1 minute, where is it? Okay. One minute. Just give me 1 minute time.
Okay, sir. It's okay.
Okay. Okay. Can you see the PowerPoint?
No, sir.
How come it is there now?
Just don't tell me.
1 minute.
Yes, sir. It is visible, sir.
Is it visible?
Yeah. Just you just move other slide. Ah, yes. Now context. Okay.
1 minute. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Now,
It is visible.
you see the first slide. Is it okay?
Yeah.
Just like I'll move to the second. Is it okay now?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Fine.
Okay, right. Okay, very good morning to all of you, and I'm very happy to be part of this webinar today on what I consider as a very significant area that all of us, I mean, who are especially the faculty members of an institution, and also, of course, the students who would be looking forward to an academic career. And of course, the management of higher education institution will have to really understand and appreciate this particular issue. We are talking about building a research culture, and I think Principal Professor Ruth Shant Kumari gave us a very wonderful framework in terms of what a research is, and how one should look at research, and how a research bent of mind is present in everybody. And what I am going to talk about today is essentially the research bent of mind of the educational institution as well as of the faculty. So I'm basically confining myself to research in higher educational institutions, and in particular, how an higher educational institution can build a research culture, and how the faculty, which are, I think, very, very critical in the process of dissemination of knowledge, get involved in this research, and how can really be part of this research culture. There are a couple of technical issues which I think are going to be addressed in the next two sessions. Therefore, I'm not touching more on those issues of citations and writing a research article and issues of that kind. But I would only focus on the conception of research culture and how do we realize that research culture. Now, this is very significant because when you are part of a particular cultural framework, you tend to get assimilate the qualities of that culture. So in other words, we all have the demonstration effect on us. We all would be growing up in an environment that is provided to us. So if we are put into a cultural setting which is very positive, then we are more likely to grow as positive personalities. So given that context, we have to look at the research culture in higher education institutions. But let me begin by briefly talking about the context in which we are looking at it now. As those of us who are connected with higher education institution, I think we need to know the context. Couple of them were already laid out in the inaugural speech by principal. For example, we are not in the top ranking educational institutions in the world. We are also, I think, a lot of catching up to do with us for publications. We are not cited as much as, our works are not cited as much as the works of some of our smaller countries compared to us. So this is one context. This is being talked about. In fact, the government of India has been very keen, and you all know that a couple of years ago, government of India came out with a scheme of recognition of institutions into institution of eminence, and giving them, if the institutions are in the public domain, giving them a grant of up to 1,000 crore rupees. This idea came mainly because the government wanted to have institutions of excellence which are on par with the best institutions in the world. And also, if you remember, maybe you are also the recipient of some of these grants apart from UGC, especially in the grants like RUSA. The national government is contextualizing it in such a way that it is not worrying whether you are a public institution, private institution, aided, unaided, all those kinds of things. If you are into certain benchmarks, if you pass through that benchmark level, then there would be huge grant available to you for exclusive things, including research. Also, national government came out with some schemes in the recent 5-6 years. I think about global Initiative for Academic Network, and then there is also Spark, which is a program that has come up now. So there's huge amount of grant that is being made available to educational institutions. Please remember, you don't have to be a university to get those grants. It is only the level at which you are performing that decides it. So there is a setting that has been built up. There is a national level ecosystem that is being built up, under which, in a competitive manner, educational institutions can access a big amount of grants, provided they have reached that benchmark. The benchmarks, I'm going to refer to that, for example, accreditations and other things set by that. So the scenario is changing. We are in a context where the scenario of higher education is fast changing. One part in terms of mandates, another part in terms of opportunities. So we have to keep that in mind. For example, there are mandates by UGC on quality and ethical standards. I am sure as teachers you will be very familiar with that. As research students, I am sure many of you will be very familiar with that. From time to time, if you look at the last 5 years mandates that have come from UGC, the recent ones, just to give the example, is that UGC has made it mandatory for all those who are doing their PhD to study as part of their coursework a paper on research ethics and quality of research. Okay, so this is, I think, recently, just a couple of years ago. Just last month, UGC has released a draft on the code of conduct for research. Okay, especially PhD in the universities or in higher educational institutions, which is now currently being discussed. And I think it is officially going to be announced again. So there are these mandates coming from UGC, and these mandates make it very necessary for individuals as faculty or research students, as well as for institutions, to move towards research by choice. They have to do that, move towards that. So these mandates are to be met with, and we are all under these mandates now, and therefore we have to think more seriously about qualitative research. Then the other two things, accreditation compulsion and ranking priorities. I am talking about it because, as I said, the accreditation, which of course the process is going to change after the new education policy anyway, but we now have this accreditation process under which national level institutions will be able to support you only if you reach that minimum level of accreditation. For example, with a CGPA of 3.26. If you are below 3.26, they consider you are not fit enough to get these things. But if you are 3.26 and above, then you will be able to get it. So this idea of accreditation forces institutions, and in accreditation, research is one part, one major part. Okay, so it forces institutions to really have this research culture as part of the necessity of accreditation and moving towards that. Okay, now the role of IQAC, for example, is essentially in terms of triggering all these things, and that you are expected to do that. Okay, but it is not just IQAC, it is the overall institutional research culture which has to be enhanced in order to get a better accreditation. Alternatively, we have rankings now. For example, NIRF, I am sure you are all very familiar. There are global rankings, maybe Time or QS, or there are these kinds of rankings. There is a lot of importance that is being given to these things. Again, if you look at India, in our context only, the national government says for any, for accessing many of these privileges, you will have to either have an accreditation, CGPA of certain level, 3.26, 3.5. If you are 3.5 and above, you become autonomous, on a graded autonomy, grade 1 autonomy you can achieve. So similarly, alternatively, it also uses NIRF. For example, if you are in the top 50 in the NIRF rank, or if you are in the top 100 in the NIRF rank, okay, now you are eligible for certain kind of things. Now to reach to that ranking, again, research is, the score that you get in research is going to be very, very significant. In fact, in NIRF ranking, the only thing that is used for all the scores that you get in research is looking at Scopus and Web of Science. That means if you have published, but if you have published in journals which are outside the purview of Scopus and Web of Science, then neither you as a researcher get the credit nor your institution get the credit. Okay, so that means under ranking we have this compulsion not only of doing research and coming out with the research output and publishing it, but publishing also in very high quality journals. So this is another thing that is coming up. Plus, now we have the new education policy. I think there have been a lot of discussions now going on. Karnataka is in the forefront of trying to implement this new education policy. Right now, the framework of new education policy seeks in the next 15 years to move towards doing away with affiliation system and making all educational institutions autonomous degree awarding institutions, where you will have those three categories, basically teaching undergraduate universities, but even those universities or colleges, but even they should have research. Also, there is universities with high focus on research, or educational institutions on high focus on research, less focus on teaching. Even that is possible. So essentially, if you have to move towards this autonomous institution, and please remember, what does the new education policy say? You would either become an autonomous degree awarding institution, and if you cannot move to that level of becoming one, you are either phased out, that means you have to be closed, or maybe you will become the constituent college of a university, another university. Now, that means again, as institutions, under the new education policy, we all have to be ready to become autonomous degree awarding institutions, which means all educational institutions will be like universities. They will have multidisciplinary programs. They will have undergraduate program, postgraduate program, research program. Everything will be there. So no classification saying that, okay, I am an undergraduate teacher, I don't have to do research kind of thing will not be there in the next 10 years. So the NEP has actually, on the one hand, opened the huge opportunities for all educational institutions as well as to the individual faculty. On the other, it has also made it, a kind of a mandate to really come out with more qualitative or more conducive research ecosystem in every institution. But there is also the other part of the context which we have to remember. We will have to do all this. All these mandate is there in the context of the socioeconomic challenges, which also we have to keep in mind. We know that there is a need to enhance gross enrollment ratio. There is a need to provide access equity to all categories of people, socially marginalized, economically marginalized, and we all are in a realistic context where we can't shy away from all that and make our educational institutions very elite institution where the access is only to limited people. That challenge is also there. Amidst that challenge, we have to also start building up a culture, a very new culture in an organization where you are going to have every higher educational institution as very organic, comprising of various kinds of activities of equal opportunities and equal priorities, including research. So this is the context in which we are talking about a research culture. And please remember, 10 years down the line, 15 years down the line, the entire scenario of higher education is going to change, and we all have to be, both as administrators as well as faculty, will have to be ready for this. So there is no time to be lost. We'll have to build up this ecosystem and be part of that. Okay, with this background, let me just come to the idea of a research culture. What do we talk about research culture, and then look at what obstacles we have and how do we really overcome that, and what we need to do in order to build a research culture. Actually, I had another definition also here, which was cited by our moderator right now from the Australian university, which I just removed because that's already being said. Now, essentially we are talking about a culture. Research culture is part of the culture, and the culture is a system that is widely shared and strongly held values. What do we mean by culture? It is a system of widely shared and strongly held values. Now, research culture encompasses the behaviors, values, expectations, attitude, and norms of our research communities. When I say research community includes everybody, institution, individual, and among individuals, you have the faculty. Of course, the most important is the faculty. You have the research students, you have the master students, all of them. Okay. It influences, this culture influences researchers' career paths and determines the way the research is conducted and communicated. I think this is very, very important. That's why I said in the beginning, if you become part of that culture, then that culture will in turn influence and determine the way you move ahead. So if the institution has a research culture, I'm sure those individuals who get into the institution will move in that direction. Okay. So therefore, such system is to be considered. So when you get into an institution, you will have to see whether this institution has that kind of a culture. And if not, how to build it. I think St. Philomena's or any institution of that kind, which I'm sure are in a direction of growing into really much more autonomous, independent institutions with, obviously with much higher expectations, your kind of institutions, I think the community expects much more. So in that kind of a institutional scenario, I think this is much more vital to have this kind of a research culture being built. So what do we actually mean by this research culture? An institution's culture of research is not simply that of group of scholars who see importance of research. Please remember, it is not that in an institution you have 100 faculty, of which 20 of them are interested in research. Now, because 20 of them are doing research, you can't say there is a research culture. It's not a few people in an institution doing research that talks about research culture. It might give some points, okay? It might talk about interests of a few people, but it doesn't really talk about research culture. On the other hand, a culture of research provides a supportive context in which research is uniformly expected, discussed, produced, and valued. This is, I think, very, very significant. Now, what are we talking about here is research becomes integral part of the institutional ecosystem. Research becomes integral part of the academic activities of the institution, right? So if you get into that institution as a research student, as a faculty, it is generally expected that you do research. Okay. So there is, we say when something becomes a part of an ecosystem, when something becomes a culture, it is going to be talked about in the corridors. That is exactly what we mean. That means when two of us meet, we talk about research. Now, please remember, what do we talk about when two faculty members meet? I am coming out of my class and another colleague of mine is coming out of his class after our lectures, and we are walking towards our room. What do we talk about? Now, if research culture is built, then I think we talk about it. If you remember, when UGC introduced the system of student evaluation of teachers, okay, there was a questionnaire that came up, and in that question, students were asked many things about teachers. And one of the question is that the students are supposed to answer. The question is, do you know what is the research that your teacher is doing? Now, this question, generally, I think in our setting, having research project, but I think most students will not know what is that research project, right? Even if there is one. Now, why this question? It's because if there is the research culture, normally the research that we are doing gets expressed in the classroom also. Or in other words, the new knowledge that is being created by a faculty member through research gets transmitted automatically, either in the form of some examples or in the form of really narrating the research findings. In some way, it gets transmitted to the students. Okay, so that's why evaluating whether students know this. I mean, this is just one example. So when we are talking about research culture, it is that an overall atmosphere which is positive to research, which is responsive to research, which is conducive to research, is present in the educational institution, and all the faculty and students become part of this ecosystem, namely research culture. So it's very, very comprehensive. We have to keep that in mind when we are talking about building research culture in higher education institutions. Now, why do we need research culture? Why do we have to build research culture so consciously? And why do we really go into say that research is important part, even if you're an undergraduate college, even if your basic idea, basic emphasis is on teaching, why should research be part of it? Now, on the one hand, we talk about standards of higher education institution. Okay, we have to reach a standard, compare it to the global standard to a certain level, and the best of our institutions still have catching up to do. That's our situation. One of the reasons probably is that we are not focusing on all aspects of higher education simultaneously. Okay, so if your standards have to be elevated as an institution or as a scholar, if the standards has to be elevated, then the higher education institution worthy of its name must promulgate research and research culture which preserves its formal and substantive right to be the gatekeeper. Now, what do we mean by the gatekeeper? The gatekeeper is the protector of knowledge. The knowledge is created and protected and stored and disseminated through standardized channels. If an education institution is worthy of being called the storehouse of knowledge, then knowledge should be created there. To create knowledge, there will have to be research. To do research, there will have to be a research culture. So research culture helps enhancing the standards of higher educational institutions. It also enhances reputation. Okay, not only standard. Reputation is more of the image, more of a public image. When we talk about an institution. When we say, okay, we want to join this institution because of the name. Now, once there is more research, once there is more publication, that institution becomes more widely known. Not only that there is a higher standard, but it also becomes widely known. When it becomes widely known, obviously the institution can attract best talent, best students, best faculty, all of them. So that reputation also increases. Also, research helps faculty advancement, higher individual recognition, better prospects, development opportunities, and consequent higher motivation level for the faculty. All these channels, not only your regular promotion in terms of, for example, an assistant professor to an associate professor to a professor, not only this kind of a hierarchy. There are satisfactions derived by individuals. Motivations come to individuals through different kinds of recognitions, and research is one of them. One that happens. Once you come out with a good research output, and if that research is being cited by 10 different researchers, or if you just come out with that research output and publish it in a very highly reputed journal, then there is a huge satisfaction that comes. It becomes a huge motivation for individual teachers, and obviously it adds value to them. It strengthens their curriculum vitae, okay, and opportunities also would increase. Therefore, a good research climate, good research culture, good research ecosystem in the higher educational institutions have advantages both to the institution as well as to the individuals who are there, and therefore I think we have to do all that is possible to build such a research culture in higher education institution. But unfortunately, there are various obstacles as of now. I think the moment we talk about research, you ask either the management of the institution or the faculty members, there are so many problems that they talk about, right? I have just picked up a few. And then there, not only this, but there can be other related things also. We can, I think, slightly understand this. Many of us will be familiar with this, therefore I am not going to much of the details of this. For example, there are some strategic issues with the institution. Institutional mission is deviated from research focus. The institution itself doesn't have much of a research focus. There are institutions that I know of where probably the institutional management will say, okay, you are recruited, you are paid to teach. If you are doing research, fine, that is your interest. We have nothing to do with that. I'm sure there would be many of them. Some of them might not even encourage people to do that. For example, a faculty member wants to go on a study leave, wants to take up a research project, wants to go on a faculty development program, something like that, and the institution may not encourage, because the institution's perspective is more on, if you allow a teacher to do that, teaching gets affected. So what is the focus? This is very strategic from the viewpoint of the institution's objective. The institution itself may not have a research focus. That, I think, needs to be addressed. No policy on research and recognition of research. There is no specific policy on research in the institution, nor there is any recognition for research, specific recognition for research. Now that cannot happen, because when you go for an accreditation, in the accreditation, there are elements that you have to bring in that includes faculty research also, including how many publications, where the publication is made, how many research projects, all those things would come in. Now it is very difficult, but still institutions are reluctant in terms of their focus on research, as well as in having a policy, a long-term policy, clear-cut policy on encouraging research, recognizing research, and rewarding research. That is absent. That is one obstacle, major obstacle that we have. So this is from the institution's perspective. They have to think about it. Then there are culture and values. Teaching focused culture. I think most undergraduate colleges in our setting, affiliated undergraduate colleges, they are too much focused on teaching. Okay. And there are student-centric curricular activities which are being done more and more, but less and less of research. Okay. Of course, extracurricular activities are there, but even when there are curricular activities, most of the curricular activities are student-centric. That would be done, but not so much into research. Then there are disciplines with vocational orientation. We talk a lot about teaching in order to make student get a job, or in order to make student get employed or start something on her own. So our focus is in terms of practice, how to make it practical, how to give them some skills that they are going to be employed. That focus is more, whereas the research focus seems to be less, because many times it so happens that the research output is of not immediate use, and therefore in the overall culture that is probably sidelined. Resentment of staff, okay, who are on research, when they are not available to students because they were doing their research. That means when there is somebody who is doing research, they may not take enough classes, they may not be available when the institution needs, they may not be available when the student needs, or maybe one teacher is doing research and the other teacher is unhappy because the other teacher has to teach more. So there are these kinds of things, resentments attached to those who are doing research. Okay, these are part of the organizational culture that we have right now, which again is an essential problem and obstacle in building the research culture. Then there is issue of skills and expertise, lack of skills in interdisciplinary research, including holistic thinking, creativity, intercultural competence, and communication. There are, we somehow lack this interdisciplinary idea, which is the root of a good research culture. Unless your thinking is molded, cutting across disciplines, you will not really grow as a good researcher. That seems to be lacking. Holistic thinking, very conceptual thinking. For example, in my discipline, in commerce, we are very much focused on practical aspects. There is so much that, for example, if I am a teacher, I am very happy to be teaching accountancy, but I am not happy teaching business organization, because business organization is theory. I'm happy teaching accounting, but not accounting theory. Now, a researcher, I think, need to have a much more holistic understanding, which needs theoretical clarification, and theoretical clarification needs a lot of interdisciplinary focus. Okay, we are in my discipline. Again, I am giving the example. We have, for very, very rudimentary reasons, tried to cut down teaching of economics in our subject, whereas economics, the background of economic theory is very much required for you to be really proficient in the field of commerce or management. So this thinking of cutting across disciplines and thinking holistically has unfortunately not been there with many of the faculty. No grant writing skills or confidence. How to prepare a proposal for a grant? How do we write a grant proposal? In fact, in many of the universities abroad, you have a separate group of technical persons who would assist people to write grant proposals. So we don't have anything like that. Neither we are trained in that, nor do we have in the institution technically experts who would support the staff to do that. No skills to manage projects, staff and budgets once funding is obtained. You may be surprised to find that in many institutions, even where a research grant is available, people are not willing to take. Even where a research grant comes, many times that grant is not put to full use. I know of researchers who would get a research project, but then they just give it up. Okay. Now these things happen because we are not fully equipped to do that. Lack of skills and confidence in writing in highly ranked journals. Lack of commitment to pursue with drafting, redrafting, receiving rejections, and revising paper for journals. Now, this is, I think, very, very important. Why are we not publishing in the very high quality journal? We have publications. Many of our PhD students publish, but they are not in the Scopus or Web of Science kind of publications. Now, why it doesn't happen? Because there is a tedious process involved in publishing in such journals. Okay, so you will have to write, and it will be reviewed. It will come back with comments. You will have to rewrite. It will come back the second time, the third time. It's possible. I have had experiences of revising an article 4 times before it got published. Right. So one should be ready for this, persisting with that. Of course, there's a lot of very cleverly choices that we have to make while we actually publish our research results. We have to carefully study a journal, look at that journal's culture, their priorities, the way in which articles are written in those journals. If you carefully study all of them and prepare your publication, then it should not be that difficult. But still, one has to be ready for this grueling exercise. If you do this, you publish 3-4 articles, then you can handle this very well. But unfortunately, many of us, the faculty, are not ready for this, do not have that kind of a skill. And also, please remember, Korea, Japan, China, these countries where there is no English, please remember, they are publishing much more in the reputed journals in English than us. So the journals in particular these days, and big publishers these days, they have their own team to look at the English part of it. If your article has a good staff, has a good research output, they are willing to provide you support to do that. Or alternatively, there are these days a lot of service providers. You write an article, give it to them. Of course, they charge you, but they will make the English corrections and give it back to you. So those kind of, especially in scientific writing, there are companies, that is their business, with experts who would help in doing that kind of action. Therefore, it is not just the question of language. It is the way in which we really do research and the quality of research output that in the final analysis matters. So we should be ready for this. Unfortunately, we are not, and therefore this issue is there. Workload and nature of appointment. In many educational institutions, for example, there are very high and exhausting teaching loads. So you teach 16 hours, you teach 20 hours, and Our few years ago, government of Karnataka came out with this ruling. First they said not 16 hours, you teach 20 hours, or if you are doing research 16 hours, otherwise 20 hours. I think they really don't understand what is the load that a particular teacher can really take. In fact, in the best of universities in the world, for the faculty, because they have to involve in teaching as well as research, there are semesters which are segregated into teaching semesters and semester where they don't teach. They are there, but they don't teach, because during that semester they are more focused on finishing their research, going for presentation of papers in various international conferences. They do that. So in one semester they are teaching, or maybe 1 or 2 semesters they are teaching, one semester they are not teaching. So much time is given to them. But unfortunately, in our context, there is high workload. Teachers will have to, have enough time for research, high administrative demands. I think our teachers in most institutions today do not only teaching, but there are a lot of other things that they are called upon to do. Okay. Or also there is a very casual, temporary, short-term contract of teachers appointed. This is a big issue now. Whole of India, I think in our state in particular, recruitments are not taking place. You are depending mostly on guest faculty, and they come and teach for 2 days, 3 days a week. So neither there is motivation for them to do research, nor there is mandate for them to do research. And therefore a large number of faculty members are not inclined to be part of doing this research activity or getting engaged in research activity. This is the other reality, which I think is a big issue, a big problem, big obstacle to build research culture. Lastly, there is lack of infrastructure, which may be physical infrastructure, or maybe lack of grants, lack of recognition, all these things. So do you really have access to literature, good library, good literature? When I say library, these days, I think we are talking more about e-libraries. So how much of a domain of knowledge is being accessed in your institution, whether it is made available to teachers, whether your campus has a internet, Wi-Fi and all those things, whether everybody can access all those things, whether there are grants, institutional grants also. I'll come to that point in what steps are to be taken to build the research culture. So whether grants are made available, whether there is a recognition when there is a good paper published in a very good Scopus indexed, Web of Science indexed journal, whether there is any recognition given to those teachers, whether there is any reward given to those faculty members. So these are not there. Because of this, there are various problems to encourage research in the institutions, educational institutions. So we have to make a very conscious effort, start building it. I think right from the first brick, we need to start. We are almost at that stage. Even in some of the universities, we are at that stage, let alone colleges. But this being very important, this being very significant, research culture being a futuristic agenda, we all as institutions, as faculty members, will have to strive to build this culture. Now, how do we build this culture? There are strategies to be adopted by the institution, by the individual. Now, what are these strategies? Now, a positive research culture stems from a well thought over long-term strategy. A strategy to build research culture cannot be a strategy that you put in place today and get the result tomorrow. It is going to take a long time. You have to think a lot about it. You will have to have maybe short-term, medium-term, long-term objectives set for this and draw up that kind of a good policy so that you are going to create this positive culture over a long period of time. Elements of research focus need to be integrated with the overall mission of the higher education institution. Whether research is part of the mission of the higher education institution, this is very critical. So your strategy will have to really bring in research as an integral part of the overall objective of the institution. The institution as well as the member of the faculty are jointly responsible to facilitate research culture. You can't simply keep blaming one blaming the other. The institution cannot keep saying our teachers are not interested, they are not doing research and things like that. Or the teachers cannot say our institution doesn't allow, doesn't recognize us. Now this fight, I think, is not going to help either of the parties. We'll have to join together in building this research culture. Therefore, the strategies of building research culture include initiatives both by the institution and by individual members of the faculty. Both will have to be involved in actually building this research culture, which is, I think, very, very important thing for us to remember. So I'll focus basically on the strategies to be done by the individual teachers. I mean, the strategy to be done by the institution, to be taken up by the institution, as well as the strategies to be adopted or used by the individual teachers. Let us first look at what the individual institutions, what the institutional level strategies are. Again, these are just a few of them that I am going to quickly mention, but not necessarily only this. There's a lot more probably that needs to be done. First of all, for example, there is recruitment itself, both recruitment and compensation. How do we get our faculty? What kind of faculty are we going to be recruited? Because when we are talking about research, the central, the core element of research are the faculty. So persons with research interest and capabilities to be selected. At the time of selection itself, I know that many institutions are hard pressed. Human resource is very difficult to get by, not so easy. Many times we are desperate and nobody is available, so we have to pick somebody. Even we pass through that situation, but I think there is no compromise on this. If you really want a good research culture, you need to have good people. We say also compensate them as per the established norms. Pay well. This is very, very important. You can't expect people to be working under the gunpoint. They are desperate, they don't have a job, so they come and accept your faculty position for a lesser salary. And it has been said, all of us know, if what you offer is peanuts, what you get is rats, right? So you will have to really compensate as per the established norms. Get the best talent, compensate them adequately, then automatically there is a level of motivation which is available, plus institution is in a better place to demand and get things done. So this is to be remembered. First step is, what kind of people do you get in to your institution? That will decide on how good a research culture you are going to have. And I think when you look at their selection, it is not just how well they communicate, how well they talk, how well they present, that is to be looked into. The inquisitive mind they have also need to be tested, and I think you will have to recruit people based on that interest, that somebody has a level of motivation to be involved in research, and of course compensate them adequately. Then second, what the institution needs to do is to emphasize on research, integrate research into institutional priorities by giving equal priority and providing adequate time for research activities. So the institution should never think the teachers are recruited, faculty are recruited to teach, and 80% of their time, 90% of their time should be for teaching and only 10% for research. It should not happen. I think research, I'm going to talk about it at the individual level: research, teaching, research, extension. All three, I think, are very, very important. All three should be recognized. There should be scope given to all the three, and all the three need to be integrated with equal priority in the research institution. So research emphasis should be brought in to the institutional agenda. This, I think, is very, very important. Recognition and reward. Recognize research output with appreciation, reward with positions, monetary benefits, and new responsibilities. Okay. If you have gone through the process of accreditation, you would know in the NAAC accreditation, in the revised format that came after 2018, there is one specific question. Okay. How the institution has rewarded those who have done their research, those who have done their research projects, or those who have published in very good journals, whether you have given them any benefit, for example, right? So this, I think, is needed. That means you will have to highlight this. When you, as an institution, there should be some mechanism through which you recognize, you appreciate, you reward these things. In some cases, in many institutions today, private institutions today, publishing, for example, in reputed journals is part of the regular duties of a teacher. For example, they would say you will have to teach so many hours and you will have to publish so many papers. That is in their appointment order itself. Okay. So therefore, the teacher also cannot escape from that, saying this is not my duty, that I am appointed only for teaching. So basically, it has to be integrated, and they should be appreciated, rewarded, if possible, monetary benefits. For example, you can, in some cases, in science particularly, especially in open access journals of high repute, you will have to pay for your article to be published. Okay. So there can be a mechanism in the institution where you would say, okay, if your article gets published in the Web of Science or Scopus Index journal, then if there is a payment to be made, that institution will bear the cost in full, in part, whatever it is. This kind of incentive also can be given. In some institutions, they say, for example, over and above the minimum that is to be done, if any faculty does more, that means publishes more or brings more consultancy projects or research projects or research grants, then the teacher should be monetarily awarded some kind of extra. So some mechanism will have to be evolved. Training and mentoring, I think this is very, very important, given the fact that all our faculty, all our research students are not fully equipped now. They are there permanent, or many times you don't get the best, so you have to take the next best. So they are not fully equipped. Therefore, there will have to be from time to time training like the one which you are doing, I think now through this webinar. They will have to arrange for regular training for new and young faculty and facilitate mentoring through collaboration with senior researchers. So on the one hand, expose them to various research skills, tell them about it, how to write a research grant proposal, how to do a research project, how to publish, all those kinds of things. Training is required. Also put them with senior researchers, try and create groups of people where automatically the youngsters will learn through the senior researchers. Infrastructure and inculcating group spirit. It is said that a good research culture need to have both these two. Invest in infrastructure, access to literature, laboratories, other physical facilities, etc. Now that should not be a grouse of people to say, well, I cannot do research because there is nothing. I can't do research, there is no internet, there is no computer, there is no library. That situation should not be there. In fact, today, as I said, the knowledge is available on the net, on the web, on the cloud. That is to be made. I really don't say that you need to have a big building with all, thousands and thousands or lakhs and lakhs of books, not necessary. Today, you have to make this web library available to everybody, which I think is very important. Laboratory, if you are in the science stream and if you have to engage in research, there will have to be this laboratory facility. So physical facilities, on that one has to, invest. And many times, of course, the institution benefits because the research grants that are available to teachers themselves will help teachers buy equipments to further add to infrastructure facilities and all that. So it's a kind of, mutually beneficial. The minimum, if the institution provides, then the researchers will help the institution to further, upgrade that infrastructure, because the grants will include that also. So we have to keep that in mind. Also create an environment of collective and collaborating work culture. This is very, very important. Best institutions in the world excel mostly because the work is done in group. In science stream, physical sciences today, in our country also, that has come up fairly better. For example, if there is one research paper published, you will have minimum 5 names in that, even more than that, right? But in the social science stream, that has not picked up so much, including commerce, management, all of them. They are more and more on individual. So much compartmentalized is our research that many times we discourage researchers to discuss with others. So this is, I think, something that is to be looked at, and group culture, collective work culture need to be encouraged as much as possible. Establish innovation center, entrepreneurship center, incubation center. Some of these things should be integral part of the institution. Once you have a center for innovation, a lot of research would automatically start taking place, right? Also, you need entrepreneurship cell, you need an incubation center where the research output goes on to become commercialized, goes on to become a commercial proposition, a business, and that business is being nurtured. So there will have to be a post-research, what you call, linkage. Post-research linkage also need to be there, that is to be thought of in the educational institutions. I think institutions should create a separate kind of a corpus or something like that for initial grants, at least keep a separate research budget, especially to support early stage researchers. Okay. In University of Mysore, there is a special budget for that, to give some minor research projects to the younger teachers, because those teachers still are not in a position to write a grant proposal for a big grant. Or maybe many times a assistant professor level person will not be eligible to get a certain kind of a grant. So because that is not available, they are not in a position to do research. So one should not be not doing research because there are no grants. There will have to be some grants, some support that should be available. Or support should be available when a research output is presented, disseminated in international conference, something like that. For that, there will have to be funding. The best idea would be to create a corpus so that you get a few lakhs of rupees as interest every year, and that interest is being used only for this, something like that. Grant applications through coordinated efforts. I think you need to have a kind of a research center, and that research center needs to help others, to find out the grant opportunities, to write the grant proposals, those kinds of things. Somebody who would direct people to the right channels, right way, that also will have to be done by the institution. Partnership and dissemination. Develop industry partnerships, which is very, very important now. In fact, we cannot go on expecting research grants to come only from the state. The state has limited resources. I don't think state can go on giving you a lot more funds. Of course, as of now, in India, there are a lot of state channels through which you can get money, not only designated grant-making organizations or departments, but but also there are like ICSSR and DST and these kinds of things. But there are also other government channels like ministries themselves also grant. There are research grants available. Still, it is going to be limited. Increasingly, educational institutions will have to look towards industry. There will have to be industry-supported research projects, industry-funded research projects. Therefore, licensing with industry is very, very important as part of creating research culture. Create avenues to disseminate research output to various stakeholders. Conduct, encourage your teachers to conduct seminars and conferences, host global level and international level seminars and conferences as an institution, so that your own faculty and others will have a good platform to exchange the ideas and make presentations, etc. So that needs to be increased as much as possible. And of course, once that happens, there can be volumes published out of that, of course, by rigorously following the methods of good publication, etc. And try and encourage teachers to publish at that level, which I think is very, very important. So these are a few things that the institution will have to do. If an institution is really interested in building research culture, then as an institution, it has to have clarity about what should be the part of this culture, how to go about doing it. What I'm suggesting is a few things. But that's not enough. We can't leave everything to the institution. I agree that once the institution does this, those who get into the institution will be a kind of a pressurized to do things. But still at the individual level itself, there are a lot of things that need to be done to be actively engaging or actively becoming a member of a cultural framework, namely research culture. Teaching, research, extension are the three core academic tasks. Give equal priority to all three. I think as a faculty, once I get into a higher education institution, when I am a faculty there, I need to understand that my job includes all three: teaching, research, extension. I'll have to do all these things. I'll have to do research, produce knowledge, pass on that through my teaching to the student fraternity. also take a step ahead and reach out to the community. Most of our extension work is related to the community. If our research, our teaching, and our basic engagement in academics doesn't take us to the community, again, it is not a good thing. Okay. In fact, a few years ago, UGC came out with its own program of community engagement of higher education institutions. There was a big budget for that, some 1,000 crore rupees, something like that. But I understand that it did not take off. Because maybe because the institutions were not keen on reaching out to the community. So teaching, research, extension, and please remember, integrated, not isolated kind of things. For example, I teach some discipline, I do research in something else, I do some other community activity. Now, that may be, I'm not saying that is wrong, but that will be less helpful. I think essentially what I teach, what I do research in, and what kind of extension work I take up, they all should be linked. When there is a linkage of that, you are really, going to excel in the field and going to become a kind of a known name in a particular field. So that should happen. Acquire critical research skills. Be comfortable with statistics, study design, data collection methods, advanced methods commonly used in one's area. Now, this is very, very important. We cannot shy away from many of those things today. If you are not good in statistics and mathematics, and if you cannot handle a SPSS or such kind of packages, you are not going to be a good researcher. You cannot depend on somebody else to do it for you. Okay, because they are all integrated part. So learn that, and please remember, becoming literate in that is very, very essential for any academic today. Therefore, acquire those critical research skills. Even if you have to earmark part of your income, to the process of that learning, you will have to do that. That's something to be done. Content knowledge. I think every teacher will have to be very familiar with one's research area, with all major published works, projects being conducted, different theories, key researchers in your area, prominent funding sources in your area. So if once you have a broad area recognized as your area of interest, you will have to be familiar with all these things. You will have to do a lot of research to know about all these things, what is going on. Please remember, a research is not something that you do and do away with. That means a research is not something where you do a PhD and then stop at that. It is integrated into your entire academic life. Okay, so you will be building on that. You will be converting your research into many papers or courses that you offer. Right? There are, for example, initially we begin with open elective kind of courses. There will be open electives coming up at all levels, and you can offer an open elective, and there may be students interested to study that. And then slowly it becomes a soft core course. And then maybe further research might also make a specialization area. Okay, and then it becomes an institution by itself. So please remember that it has a long life, and therefore one should be very, very aware of. One cannot forget a research area after doing PhD, after publishing a couple of papers. You will have to be continuously engaged, and therefore one should have entire content knowledge. Disseminate. How are you going to disseminate your research output? Make presentation in international platforms, publish in peer-reviewed and globally indexed journals. Very, very important. Of course, there is a lot of complaint also about this. People say that, how can you say that only Scope of Web of Science are good, others are not good? Okay, I agree with that. There may be, some of us may have published very good papers, but unfortunately they may not be indexed journals. Some of us probably did not know that they are not indexed journals, or we did not know that we have to publish only in this. This is one part. The other part is, why should we say only these are good, others are not good? I agree, but unfortunately there will have to be some parameters, for you to finally reach that benchmark. And for that, you will have to go for something. As of now, we have some of them like Scopus, Web of Science, etc. CARE also now with UGC. So focus on those journals. This is very, very important. Now, what happens when you publish here? When you publish in this, you will be known globally much better. You will be cited much better. Please remember. And once you cite more, all your H index, I index, all those things will improve. Okay. And then what happens? You will be recognized as a specialist in a particular area. And sometimes some grant making agencies will by themselves approach you because they will be looking for people in that area. So it has a connectivity. Therefore, you will have to publish. Always focus on the best journals. Don't ever go for predatory kind of journals. Don't ever go for, publish somewhere just to fulfill the requirement like that. Publish with renowned publishers. Okay, you need not have to always think of only journal publications. You can publish book, you can write book chapters, you can publish conference proceedings, all of them. If you are publishing them with the best of the publishers, then what happens is the level of your output that you are publishing would be high, and all of them will again fall automatically within Scopus Web of Science kind of classification, and your publications will be accessible to the whole world. I'm just mentioning a few names. I am not saying these are the only best publishers like Springer, Routledge, Elsevier, Sage, Oxford. Now these are some of the very well known publishers. Always aim at publishing with such publishers, then only you will be able to come with the best. Projects. Be part of more than one research project at a time. So when I'm saying this, I think all the faculty, almost all the faculty at any given point of time till your retirement at least, of course, I would even say a best academic is one who would continue doing research and having projects even after so-called retirement, but there is no retirement for good academic. But at least when you are there, you should, I think, be part of more than one project, not just one project. When I say this, maybe you are a principal investigator doing research in one project, you are an advisor for another project, you can be a consultant for another project, you can be a co-investigator in another project. So one has to be, I think, to get engaged in research, one has to be part of related things, not only one project, but other also. So obviously, when you are principal investigator in one project, you are main for that. You are maybe advisor or a co-investigator in another project done by another colleague, not only necessary from your institution, from another institution also. That is the next point that I'm talking about, networking. Establish network, exchange ideas with researchers in chosen area, from another institution, from another country. Okay. So my current research project is a research that is done in 6 countries, and it's a network, it's a group of researchers from 6 different countries. We have joined together. So that kind of a network is very, very necessary, because sometimes, for example, you don't have funding available for your area of research in your country, but in the same area, another person in another country may have a grant, but that other person also needs human resource. So if you have that kind of a network, then grant will be raised in another country, but you are doing your research, part of that research, publishing that research, all those things will take place. So as a faculty member, I think always you should be in a position to have this network of researchers. So if you say that I know researchers in my area in half a dozen countries and I work with them, then automatically the quality will be high. So these are at the individual level what faculty, I think, will have to do to really come out with a good research culture. Finally, I'm just referring to a Hanover research project, which I just downloaded that document, which did some study of research culture in different institutions. I think they took 3 institutions and did a comparative study and tried to come out with some conclusions. These conclusions may be helpful. It may be just a guiding post both for the institution as well as individuals as to globally what is the status of this research culture and how it is to be handled. Culture of research requires both institutional and unit-based leaders to set clear research goals and communicate them effectively. So there will have to be both institutions and unit level goals, and these goals have to be effectively communicated, exchanged. Only then a research culture will emerge. Institutions wishing to develop a culture of research must allocate significant resources for faculty training and support. So these institutions which have had good research environment, they had made significant resources, allocated significant resources for faculty training and support. Developing culture of research requires open and collaborative personal relationships among faculty members, where the faculty members are a cohesive group, where faculty members have a lot of exchange of ideas, where they work together. Those institutions have always had better research environment or research culture. So very important to have the peer level interactions as much as possible. To implement cultural change, administrators must be prepared to tailor resource allocations based on faculty members' current motivation and abilities. Now, what does it mean? It means the innate research interest of the faculty need to be encouraged. It is not that you need to forcefully bring them to a particular area of research. There is nothing like a good area and a bad area for research. There is good research and bad research. That is different. Area could be any area. When I think some 30 years ago, when I moved into my area of research interest, my professor at that time had said that, you are a commerce graduate and you should be doing more research on stock market, on banking, or on corporate affairs, something like that, not move into the non-profit or the social business kind of an area. But I found that in terms of opportunities, in terms of grants or research projects or whatever it is, there was no dearth in any area. The best in any area definitely can contribute well. That's my personal experience. So I would say encourage people to do research in their area of interest, which I think is very, very important. Culture of research may take years to develop, and once established, require regular maintenance. Don't ever think that this culture would remain and would automatically become strong and will always remain strong. I think as an institution, we have to understand that you have to consciously develop a research culture, and then you have to very consciously maintain it also. Continuously be watchful of this. Plans for a culture of research should include consideration of student involvement. Again, something that the study has noticed is that catching them young is very, very necessary. In most cases, I found that master's students, when they do their research, they have their supervisor or their guide or whoever it is. In most cases, the master's dissertations are published as research papers jointly by the teacher and the student. Now, this is, I think, a very, very significant thing that we have to note. How many of us, actually publish the master's dissertations? Once you have that objective in mind of involving students, I think many colleges now have the master's program. So you teach the master's program. There is a dissertation or a project work for a master's student. So the teacher who is guiding can now use that opportunity and take that student in as a researcher, ensure that quality, and by the time the teacher, the student finishes that project, you can also have 1 or 2 papers published, and the student will be so happy to find the name, in print. And then those students will be motivated to take up further research. That means the next generation of research would come, because the research climate, research, environment actually needs that inflow of, more researchers. Therefore, capturing students as making them part of the research agenda is also required in order to have a strong research culture in the institutions. These are just the findings of that study. Like this, there are many other studies. Research culture is an agenda that has been talked about a lot all over the world. In our situation now, I think this is very, very important. I strongly feel that good institution like your institution, I think, need to focus more on this and should create that kind of a culture and environment where every teacher, every faculty, every postgraduate student gets involved in one way or the other in some kind of a research. So it's a collective endeavor. One has to do that. That it is necessary, no doubt about it. I think we are fast moving into that kind of a situation in the future where no higher education institution can be devoid of a good research base. That will be very much required. I hope these kind of information sharing would be of help to you. I'll be happy if you to answer if you have questions. We'll be happy to listen to your views if you have your views on this. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor, for your informative session. We have a few questions. One is from Paul, is HOD from Department of Tourism and Hospitality. So he is having question like he is expecting suggestions regarding tourism funding agencies.
Yeah, why only tourism? I mean, tourism is part of our regular research funding. So if you have a specific research project in mind, specific area of research in mind, you can certainly approach any of the conventional grant making agencies also. That means you are eligible to get research funding from UGC, ICSSR, any of these kinds of agencies. This is on the one hand, number one. Number two, you also can approach, for example, ministries of tourism in Karnataka or in India, which also will have some grants for different kinds of. Plus, there are associations of promotion of tourism. Sometimes they will be interested in making a grant for certain studies. You can approach them as well. There are international organizations, grant making organizations, which will be interested in funding those things. But it all depends on what is your area of interest in tourism, because it can vary. On the one hand, from developing a tourism destination or a plan for a tourism destination could be your interest, or you can also be studying the socio-economic impact of tourism, for example. Okay, so all cultural significance of tourism. In a sense, a study related to tourism would come under any of the grant agencies. It is in that sense. But if there is a specific topic, then of course you will have to approach the concerned.
Thank you, sir. There is one more question from. Yes. I'm audible, sir?
Yeah, sure. Please go ahead.
Okay. There is one more question from Sandhya Rani. She's asking, sir, how a research culture to be built between student and research scholar?
Between student and research scholar, or among students and research scholars? I mean, I understand.
Yeah.
If I understand your question correctly, probably you are asking how to build this research culture to influence
students.
Scholars and students. Well, whatever I said now in terms of institutions research culture, faculty research culture would automatically be applicable to the research scholars as well as the students also. If the institution has a good research environment, if the faculty, I mean, if you as a teacher, you are part of that research culture and you are doing research, you would automatically be in a position to influence the research scholar. If I, for example, if I am the guide of a PhD student, and if I have my research projects and I have a research bent of mind, obviously that will have its demonstration effect on my student, on the research scholar. So one part of it is you can formally integrate research as part of the curriculum. Now most of us have done that. For example, master's students will study a course on research methodology, and research students will study research methodology. This is one part of it. The other part of it is making them involved in research in whatever way possible. I am sure, for example, you can integrate a lot of your students into your own research, either to do experimentation or to collect some field data or something like that. When that is done, their interest would automatically go up. Okay, so it is not a one dose kind of a thing that you do this and the students will be interested in research. it is the institutional overall research culture, the faculty's overall engagement in research that will make the student interested in that. Of course, you can't expect all your students to be oriented to research anyway. But then there are students who will be interested, whom you can see that they have a sense of research and interest in research. You can get them involved in your own research areas. Apart from, of course, teaching a course on research, of course, is required.
Thank you, sir. I have one personal question. Suppose we are not having any connection or network with foreign professors or scholars. So how to find a relationship and how to build a network, how to go ahead with different kind of research activity in international level?
Okay. You see, every researcher in any field would always be looking for networking. So just as you sitting here in India would be interested to have a network with scholars from outside India, scholars from outside India also will be interested to be part of the network. So in most cases, what we need to do is, of course, we should have our clarity in terms of what is an area of my research. And once I start doing my research in that area, I obviously, naturally come across many names from many countries who are doing research in that area. I will be referring to their articles, their books, and so many things. And once I do that, for example, let me just look at this hierarchical. Let us say that you are doing your PhD. And at the time of doing your PhD, okay, you would be doing a lot of literature survey. And in the literature survey, you will come across so many people who have done research in this area. And you finish that. And after your PhD, you would like to take up a research project in that area. And to do that, what you can always do is, okay, you yourself may be able to get a grant. So you can share your proposal with some of those people who are in other countries and say, okay, I have done my PhD, and during my PhD, I saw, I referred to your study, and then go to the website of that university and see what they are currently doing, and then say you are currently, I found that you are doing this. This is what I want to do. I'll be happy if you can give your comments, something like that. Reach out to them. And when you do that, I'm sure they will be responding very well. And once that happens, there are so many other things. Once that happens, that person might give you suggestions. That person might say, okay, they'll be interested to associate. So many things will happen. So it is like we have to go out, reach out to them, and share our research with them, share our interest with them. That slowly builds up. And similarly, the other one is your networking will start in research conferences. If you go and make a presentation in an international research conference, obviously you will meet many people who will definitely share, you exchange your cards with them, you find them there. You will have to keep up that, identify which are the good people, keep up the contact with them. These days, I know contacts are so very easy to be made. Similarly, for example, you have another expert in the area of your research interest, organize a webinar, inviting them as a resource person. Very easy now through doing this. So you build up. So it is a stage by stage, opening up and exchanging ideas, not being hesitant to share what we are doing with others in the network.
Okay, thank you, sir. There is, we'll consider it as a last question because it is almost time. So it is from Noor Mubashir, Department of Social Work. She is asking, how far it advisable to take help of technical advice or support to apply for a project?
Yeah, you can definitely take technical support. As I said, in many places, in many universities abroad, there is a separate technical group who supports faculty members right from identifying the funding source to writing the grant proposals, etc. There is absolutely no problem in that. Of course, in a institution, if there are technical experts available, you can take their help. Otherwise, you can take help from senior researchers who have already taken such projects and written grant proposals. Ask them, take their help. If none available, you can even go out and take support from them. As I said, people, scholars outside India who cannot write a paper in English, they depend on a paid consultant, to actually check the language part, correct the language part, and make it acceptable to a journal. They do it. There are grants available for this from the institutions. So certainly taking help from a technically expert person or a group or an institution is not bad. But please remember, as a researcher, there are certain technical aspects about which we as researchers should be very familiar with. The most important one, most common one is statistics, for example. So if I am doing a research in my area, and if I depend on another person to do all the statistical analysis for me, there is a danger that I am not able to really understand and interpret my data properly. So I would very strongly advise that technicalities which are basic to research should be known to every researcher. But there are a few things which are beyond that. You can certainly be dependent on such technical experts.
Thank you, sir. Now I hand over mic to Prakash Kutino, IQAC coordinator, to summarize the session.
Very good morning to Professor Dongre for the erudite talk that you just mentioned in this session. From building a research culture in higher education institutions, when you have focused clearly, everybody starts with a negative point, and you had these obstacles to research culture, wherein you elaborately mentioned the strategic issues, cultural and values, skills and expertise, and also definitely a faculty who is in teaching. When we want to push them into a research, they think of workload and the nature of their appraisal. It was so informative, sir. And also to counter that, you came with the strategies for building research culture in higher educational institution like St. Philomena's College Autonomous Institution. And your institution level strategies, as well as the individual level strategies that you mentioned, was highly informative, and it was really focused to the topic that we are talking about today. It's on quality of research and creation of new knowledge, how we can improve research culture. Being from the point of IQAC, where every day there could be an incremental growth in all domains of the area where the institution is growing, and also with the new education policy coming through, there are a lot of challenges where the UGC considers granting per se is given to somebody else now. The Niti Aayog, they say, and the minor research projects and the major research projects are being stopped, and getting the autonomous grants also, they have stopped it. So in this scenario, how we can tap the various agencies for the research projects, related issues. Definitely you focused on so many areas today, and it was highly informative, sir. So on behalf of St. Philomena's College and also on behalf of IQAC, I wholeheartedly thank you for your erudite talk. So with this, we conclude the session. Thank you, Professor, once again.
Thank you very much.
So next, we will be moving on to the next session. Over to Dr. Reena Francis, madam.
Thank you, Mr. Ronald Prakash Kutino, for concluding the first session. Moving forward for the second session of the day, the topic is Art of Research Writing and Publishing. One may ask or think why researchers write up what they have been doing or what they are currently working on. There are so many reasons: to remember, to understand, to critically evaluate, for scientific communication, to get a legal protection of intellectual property rights, to gain reputation, publish to get more citation, for commercial gains, and so on. Apart from all these, as an academician, it is necessary to publish papers in recognized journals to get an increment or even promotion. Hence, It is said, publish or perish. A quote, if you don't go after what you want, you will never have it. If you don't ask, the answer is always no. You don't step forward, you're always in the same place. A quote by Nora Robert. Now, I request Dr. Praveen Saldana, Assistant Professor, Department of Economics, to introduce Dr. Premakumar G.S.
Very good morning. I'm Dr. Praveen. Very good morning. I'm Dr. Praveen Saldana from the Department of Economics. It gives me immense pleasure to introduce Dr. Prema Kumara GS, who is the second speaker of this online webinar. He is a professor of economics, Saravimi PG Center, University of Mysore, Tubinkere, Mandya. Dr. Prema Kumara GS has won UGC Research Award, New Delhi. He was IUC Associate, IAAS, Shimla. He was adjudicated as the best researcher in applied econometrics by the University of Mysore in 2017. He is associated with the Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore, Indian Association for Canadian Studies, Chiang Mai University, Chiang Mai, Thailand. He worked for Washington, D.C. on clear energy project. He got doctoral degree on power sector reforms. He has successfully guided 11 scholars for their doctoral degree. He has also successfully guided 18 scholars for their MPhil degree. He has written books on power sector restructuring and reforms in Karnataka, gender mainstreaming USA, and dictionary of economics and commerce. He has published research articles in 54 journals. He has also published research articles in 17 edited books. He has presented papers in 38 international conferences and also in 61 national seminars and conferences. He has delivered more than 80 special lectures on research, econometrics, current issues at various institutions in India and abroad. He is an expert in data analysis, model building, and interpretation of results. He is also an expert in handling softwares such as SPSS, eViews, Gretel. Now I call upon Dr. Prema Kumara to take over this second online session. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Praveen. Respected faculty of St. Philomena's College. First, I would like to congratulate the departments and the faculty of the college for organizing such a very important webinar on research-related issues to provide the opportunity for a young researcher as well as the senior faculty to inculcate the culture of writing research paper and publishing the research articles. So whenever we discuss or talk about writing a paper, always we go with a negative kind of attitude, saying, is it possible to write a good research article which can be published in a very good peer-reviewed journal? But it is inevitable for everyone being in the academic field. It is very, very important to publish research works.
as Madam already mentioned, publish or perish. So teaching, research, they are becoming most important activities of the academicians, particularly the teachers, in the university systems, UG or in PG. We have to publish research articles to get our promotions or to find recognition in our own community, academic community. So writing a good research paper, maybe it is somehow difficult, but it is, I don't say it is impossible. If you have certain skills in you, as already Professor Dongre sir mentioned, when we have certain skills in you as an academician, certainly it is possible to write a good research article which can be published in a very good journal where you wish to publish. But for that, you need to be prepared very well. So in my presentation, I will be concentrating on two issues. One is how to write a good research paper and what are the needed things for writing a research paper. That's one part. And in the second part, I'm going to discuss with you where to publish, because nowadays UGC has imposed one should publish in a peer-reviewed or UGC care list. How to know where to publish a good research article. So in my talk, first I will concentrate on how to write a good research paper. Let me start with my presentation. Yes. Slideshow. Yes. From the beginning, you can give, sir. From the beginning, first one. Yes. Yeah. Next, sir. So outline of an article. So when you want to publish a good article, you should know what are all the things should be in a research article. The very first thing is title. Writing a title itself is a very, very important thing because it should attract the publisher to publish it. So therefore, title itself is very, very important. And how to write the abstract, writing the abstract for the research article, and how to give the keywords. So that's also very, very important, giving the keywords in the search. Whenever the people search for some articles, they search with some keywords. So therefore, it's important to give some keywords, and how to write the introduction for the research article, and how to do the review of literature. How should be a review of literature, and what is the methodology you are adapting to write that article, how you are going about, and how you get the results, and how you interpret the results, whatever you get from either from the softwares or from on your own, and how to write the conclusion, how to give the references, and how to give the table numbers, and how to give the graphs numbers. So these are all the very, very important things which are being scrutinized for the updated scientific style. So therefore, in each of these headings, you have to be thoroughly understood how to write the title, how to write the abstract, give the keywords, introduction, how you present the review of literature, methodology, results, conclusion, reference, tables, as well as the graph. So I will go by one. So while writing, how do you write? There are two types of the titles generally we see. Generally in the languages and in the humanities, they give implicit titles, which cannot explain completely what we have written in the research articles. Whereas in the explicit titles, we write explicitly what we have done in our research paper. which is clearly explains the complete content of the research article. And then what are the issues and the subject matters we have taken for that research article should be reflected in your title. That is the next important thing. So the first one, are you going to write the title explicitly or implicitly? If in the languages, they write in the implicit form, whereas in the social sciences, we write the title in the explicit form, so that we explain everything, what are all we have explained in our research article. The second important while writing the title is, what are the issues you have discussed in your paper, and what is the main subject matter of your paper? That has to become in the title. And what to include or not to include, that's also very, very important, because the title should not be very lengthy or should not be very short. If it is a short, then you cannot explain what you have done in your paper. If it is too long, it is very difficult to understand also. So therefore, what to include, what not to include, that's very, very important. And at the same time, when you have a long title, make it two part, the main title and the subtitle. So use of specific characters. So in the title, we should not use comma, full stop, semicolon. Sometimes you can use colon, but you should not use a slash, question mark. Some people write, particularly in languages, they write the title with the question mark. So it should not be question mark, because the title should not be questionable. The title should not be questionable. So therefore, don't use these kind of the specific characters in the titles. Don't use this. You can use colon, but you cannot use others. So some example I have given. This is the title. One of the title I have given: Techno-efficient green and clean energy for sustainable development in selected countries of Asia. So in this title, it clearly explains what content is, what is the focus, and where the study has conducted, for what the study has conducted, whether it is a theoretical paper or a empirical paper, is it based on the arguments or based on the data. Everything is clearly explained. So here I have used both title and the subtitle. The title explains the content and the subtitle explains the method of I'm going to explain the paper, illustrate the paper. At the same time, we should not forget the title should be in this title case. Like each of the first words, they start with the capital word. Some people write small words. For example, techno-efficient green. Green should not be a small letter. It should be a capital one. So these are the small things you should know while writing the paper. So people do PhD and while doing their PhD, often and often we used to tell, no, while writing the title, subtitle, you should not use small letter, you have to use. Some people completely write in the capital letters. It should not be. So always you have to follow the title case. Next, sir. And how to write the abstract? Generally, people says whenever you call for the paper, particularly in the conferences, what they say, first you send your abstract and then send your full paper. It's not like that. So without completing your research paper, you cannot write abstract, because abstract is the gist of your research paper. So without completing your paper, writing abstract is meaningless. For me, it is meaningless, because abstract is the gist of the paper. So therefore, while writing, what should be concentrated? What the important things you need to understand? So in the abstract, the major thrust of the study has to be explained in one line. In one line, you have to explain 1 or 2 lines, the major thrust of the study. For example, while writing a paper, so for example, student writing on the energy. Energy is the most critical, vital infrastructure in development process, and studying the role of energy in small-scale industries, in agriculture, has its own scope. So explain the thrust of the paper in the one line, the importance of the paper or the thrust of the paper in 1 or 2 lines. You are not defining the here. You are not going to define the concept, what you have used, or the subject matter you have used. Only you are writing the thrust of the study. And then in the second or in the third sentence, you write about the what data you have used and what methodology you have used. But it should be very brief. It should not be more than 1 or 2 lines, 1 or 2 sentences. So you use for 1 line for the data and use 1 line or the 1 sentence for the methodology, right? So it should be very brief, but you should mention what data you have used, whether you have used primary data or the secondary data, cross-section data, time series data, what data you have used, where you have collected, and what are the techniques that you have used in your analysis. The major technique, for example, if you have introduced a factor analysis, you write the study has largely followed the principal component analysis procedure. Otherwise, you can write the study has used co-integration methodology developed by Johansson, or ARDL methodology developed in econometrics. So like that, you write only 2 sentences, one for the data what you have used, another for the methodology or the major techniques what you have used for analyze the your issues. And then you also, if you have specifically used some techniques or some models, if you have developed for this paper, then certainly mentioned about that. If it's a unique technique, for example, a SEM, a structural equation model. So it's a new techniques which is not largely used in the research areas, in different research areas. It's a very new technique. If you are using that kind of the structural equation model, which is very new, then you mentioned about it. If you have constructed your own model for explaining the data, then also you mentioned what model you have developed. So that's very important. So these are in 3 or 4 lines, you complete the thrust, the methodology, and the techniques and models you have used. And in the next important thing, the major outcome of the study of your study. So what you have argued, what you have proved, what you have identified, that has to be, the study has identified, the study has found. Like that, you have to write 1 or 2 major findings of your study. It may be in the form of arguments, it may be in the form of inference, it may be in the form of the statements, but it should be out of your study. After completing your study, what you have proved, what you have found, that has to be mentioned in 1 or 2 sentences. And the major challenges and the problems what you have identified while studying this issue in this particular paper, that has to be mentioned, and what suggestions you are giving for that. So you have to mention both what the challenges or the problems you have identified in the paper, in the study, and at the same time what suggestions you also identified for that. For example, let me give you challenges. Maybe there is a gender discrimination in the higher education. Then you have identified the problem. At the same time, what suggestions you are going to give. That should be a tested suggestion. It should be based on the proof, based on the testing you should give. Because whenever you give suggestion, it should not be a vague one. It should not be a general one. It has to be proved in your research article. Based on the tested proof, only you have to give the suggestion. So therefore, suggestion should be specific and should be based on the tested proof which you have given in the articles. And at last, the 1-line concluding remarks for that abstract. So therefore, the abstract itself should explain what the paper is going to talk about. So once if you read an abstract, you should be give the most of the important features of your research article. So therefore, writing abstract has a very good role in publishing a research articles, because most of the times people will see the abstract before going to your research articles. If you wish to publish, then you have to write a good abstract. That's very important. And then in any journal, in a standard journal, they expect the keywords to be given. So how should be the keywords? That keyword should be, what are the issues you have covered? For example, sustainable development, energy, clean energy, CO2, something like that. When you are writing some article, in that article, there will be some major issues related to your subject, chosen subject. That keyword should highlight the issues of your paper. The keyword should highlight the subject matter you have chosen for the paper, and you are using a very specific concepts, different concepts or the standard concepts in the journal. You take that concepts and use. For example, revealed preference. Okay, it is not simply a preference, it is a revealed preference. If you are using that revealed kind of preferences, then you write the keywords like revealed preferences. Sir, next. And again, I am going one by one. In the research paper style only, I am going one by one. And in the introduction, what has to be written in the introduction? Generally, people write about the definitions and some of the previous data and elaborately explains the features of the concepts. There is no need to write the definitions or the features of the subject matter you have chosen, because you are not the new to writing the research paper on the particular subject. There are definitions which are already available. There are features which are already explained in the previous research works or in the standard textbooks. So therefore, there is no need to write the definition for the any concepts you have used. For example, if I say energy, there is no need to explain what is energy, because the definition for energy it's already known. And there is no need to, what do you mean by sustainable development? There is no need to explain what do you mean by human development. People start with human development is the enlarging the choices of people in binding so and so. There is no need to write the definitions. If you are very much interested in writing the definitions, give it in as a footnote. Don't write in the main paper. So what you have to write in the introduction, you have to write only the importance of the subject matters with importance of the subject matter. Because when you choose a subject matter, I will come to that a little later. When you are going to publish a research paper, you have to publish a contemporary issues, the subject matter which is relevant and current scenario. So therefore, whenever you write the importance of this subject you have chosen for the article in relation to the current issues, the current ongoing issues. There are in each of the time, for example, 2015 was declared as the human development. So you write about the human development. So today it is 2015 and 2030, it is the sustainable development decade. So you write about the importance of the sustainable development, importance of the sustainable development with relate to your subject, chosen subject. If you're talking about the Hungary, if you're talking about the gender, if you're talking about the technology, you talk the importance of the technology in connection to sustainable development. You talk about the energy in relation to the importance of the energy in relation to the sustainable development. Poverty, importance of poverty in relation to the sustainable development. So like that, whenever you write the introduction, you should start with the relevance of the paper and the importance of this importance of the subject matter you have chosen and the need of that topic for the present discussion or examining the issues or explaining in that articles. So therefore, writing the importance of the subject matter should start with the first line, first sentence, and then status of the subject matter. Just you give the status, the current status of the subject matter. So here you can give one or two informations or the data source to explain the status of the subject matters. For example, while writing the research article on energy and sustainable development, you have to write for the emissions, energy alone contributes 60% of the emissions into the environment. That explains the severity of the problems. So therefore, while explaining the status of the subject matter, you give one or two important data source to explain, to understand the severity of the research issues you have taken. And straight away come down to the issues, the what issues that you are going to address. Because after you have completed your review of literature, we will be understand, so what are the major issues which are already studied in the previous by the previous researchers. So, but you are not going to explain all those issues in your research articles, and you are going to explain one or two issues or examine one or two issues particularly related to the present research topic which you have chosen. So while explaining these issues directly, you are implicitly explaining what is the issues that you are going to explain and what are the objectives of your paper. So objective issues should be coincide with the objectives that you are going to study in this paper, because most of the times in any standard research articles we need not to write the objectives and hypothesis separately. Objectives of the paper, hypothesis of the paper, there is no need to write separately, and you should not write. What I have understood from seeing the hundreds, thousands of good research articles, what I understood, at the end of the introduction, we need to write implicitly what are the objectives that you are going to examine, and at the same time what we are going to prove or disprove, that also has to be written at the end of the introductions. So therefore objectives and hypotheses should be implicitly written at the end of your introductory part. And you also explains the rationale of your study and also the applications or implications of the study. After reading this paper, what benefits that will be. So, okay, in this paper, I have developed a new methodology that can be used in further research. In this study, I am going to identify a new solution for the problem, and that can be used for the policy formulations or the programs. So like that, you have to end with your introduction by saying what is the usefulness of your paper. What is the usefulness of your paper? So this is the introduction, and introduction should not be more than 1 page. If possible, write the introduction in only 1 or 2 paragraphs, and it should not be more than 1 page, because the number of pages in an article, that also matters. So there are very good journals which can publish more than 10 pages, but there are good journals which also insist you to write the research article only in 6 to 7 pages or 4 to 5 pages. So because their journal format itself is like that. So when they expect you to write a research article in 5 pages, then then if you have written introduction itself for 2 pages, 2.5 pages, where will you put your review of literature, methodology, results and discussion, and all conclusion, reference, and all those things? It becomes very difficult. So therefore, as possible, write very precisely and give focus on these issues what I have explained. Sir, next, sir. And then it is the next part is the review of literatures. But it is either way you can go, or in reverse way you can go, because whenever you start writing a research paper, you are not going to write the abstract first. But what I have told, I am going with the style of the paper. I'm going with the style of the paper. I'm not talking about how to write the research paper. Just I'm going with the style of the paper. In the style of the paper, first it comes title, then it comes abstracts, then it comes keywords, then it comes introduction, then it comes review of literature. So that's how in the style of the paper I'm going. So what you have to write, the review of literature is the gist of previous works. About what? The issues analyzed in the previous research work. What are the issues analyzed in the previous research work? That has to be mentioned. And what type of data they have used in the previous research work. And what methodology and the techniques used in the previous research work. That has to be identified. And what are the agreements in finding the findings and arguments. So sometimes the 2 different papers have come out with 2 different arguments, or 2 different papers can come with the same kind of the arguments. So what are the same kind of the arguments and what are the different kinds of the arguments? So here the disagreements in findings and arguments have to be mentioned very clearly. And how you write, don't write the review of literature like Prakash Putino in his paper written so and so. Don't write like that. It should be like an argumentative kind of the review of literature, which should be accomplished in just 10 to 15 sentences. It should be within 10 to 15 sentences. Start with the major issue of what you have taken. So the issue of sustainable development has largely studied in previous research works. So largely, when you say largely, it is starting with the United Nations, World Bank, and Sustainable Development Peak Team, and there are many good institutions. Give their references, what they have studied. So who are the people largely studied that sustainable issues? You give the references there itself. And then what issues they have studied, whether they have studied the poverty issues or the technology issues or the environmental issues or the employment issues, what issues they have largely studied, you mentioned about that. So at the same time, you also mentioned in the second line, and in the third line, come down to the data and methodology they have adopted in writing the papers. You talk about all those things. And then you come down to the results parts, what they have proved, what they have disproved, what they have connected, what are the relations they have established. So like that, you write about the results of the arguments of the previous research works. So like that, your review of literature should be completed within 10 to 15 sentences or line. If it is 10 sentences, okay. And at the same time, what the purpose of writing the research gap or the review of literature is to explain what has already done, what has not done, and what are the issues which are not yet examined or not completely or holistically examined. And you also write what you are going to explain or what you are going to examine. So therefore, it is a lead to identify what has done and not done. We'll be able to identify the research gap, to state out the gaps, what the present work is going to do. So this is very, very important while writing the review of literatures. So how to give the references and all, I will come at the last part of my presentation. So next. And the methodology, already have told, are you going with what type of the data you are using and the form of data, source and origin of data, what is the period the data you have taken, where you have taken, are you using the non-parametric techniques, are you using the parametric techniques, are you have developed any specific model or designed a new techniques. So what you have used, the data and methodology, that should be mentioned. So next page. But what I have understood while writing the research paper, we have two different types of the analysis. So before starting your analysis, it's very important to understand what are the analysis methodologies we have. Largely, we divide into two types, the types of empirical analysis. One is a descriptive analysis, another one is analytical analysis. One should know, already Dongre sir was talking about, so we have to be very careful while taking the technical help for getting the results for the data what you have used. So instead of, even for getting the results, you should know what results you are expecting. Sorry. There are two types of the analysis we have. One is the descriptive analysis, another one is the analytical analysis. And it is also known as the inferential analysis or the argumentative analysis. The second one, analytical analysis, is also known as inferential and as well as the argumentative kind of the analysis. You are going to prove or disprove some of the analysis. What I advocate here is, as far as possible, minimize the use of the descriptive analytical tools and techniques, because they simply explain what is what. They will not come to help you in making the arguments or drawing the inferences. So only the analytical analysis and the inferential statistics will come to your help to help you in making the arguments, in making the statements or drawing the inferences. So therefore, it is always better to use analytical tools and techniques like inferential statistics, econometrics, that kind of the tools and techniques. So we have largely mean difference techniques and relations related techniques, correlation testing, and impact relations like econometrics. The whole lot of econometric techniques are there you can use. and the processes association techniques or distribution techniques that you can use. It also includes econometric analysis. I have told you should be aware what are all the techniques which are already available, and what are the techniques methodology have been used in used in the previous studies. For example, somebody has already used a structural equation model in explaining the interrelationship among the teachers in developing the research culture. So they have used structural equation model in the previous paper. If you are using only mean, median, or the some standard deviation for explaining the same issue, then your paper becomes very weak. It looks like a very simple, narrow kind of the paper which is not using advanced technology. Therefore, by doing the review of literature, you should understand what are the techniques, what are the models have already used. If possible, at least use the recent papers, use the models or use the techniques. And if possible, try to use the better version of the techniques or the modified version of the same techniques. So next. Some of the things I have given, I am not going to explain all these things because due to the time limit, I am not going to explain. Only things, what are the techniques we have? So if your data is nominal, ordinal, ratio scale, based on the data you are using, what type of the data you are using, based on the type of data, whether the data is nominal, ordinal, or interval scale, or it is in the ratio scale, based on the nature of the data and how many variables are you going to handle at a time, based on the nature of the data and how many variables you are handling at a time. Based on that, I have prepared this slide. So what techniques are available to use? So based under the descriptive analysis, under the inferential analysis. Next, sir. So these are the techniques. So if you are using two variables at a time and based on the data, that is nominal, ordinal, interval, and ratio scale, again, these are the techniques which are readily available, and you can make use of all these informations while writing the research articles. Next, sir. And if you are using more than two variables at a time, we call it as a multivariate analysis. There are two general groups. One is the analysis of dependence. Largely it is including multiple regression, MANOVA, ANOVA, canonical correlations, and different econometric tools and techniques that we use to explain the analysis of dependency. So when you are going to explain the dependence of one variable and many variables or the different types of the variables, then you have to go with this kind of the multivariate analysis, which is preliminarily a analysis of dependency. And if you are not explaining the relationship, or if you are explaining the interrelationship, then you use this kind of cluster analysis, factor analysis, and structural equation models. You can use these kind of the models for the analysis of interdependence. Next, sir. So all this multivariate can be divided into two: dependence methods and interdependence methods. So here just I have given only the gist of the techniques which are available and that you can use in while writing your research article to make it is more effective and more informative and technically sound. Because use of techniques, appropriate techniques in a research article has got very, very good importance in publishing it. Because any good publishers always see what techniques they have used and how they have used that techniques. So they see it, whether it is appropriate in this context or not. So therefore, before using any techniques, understanding its usability in that context is very, very important. So therefore, for that, with that background, I have explained this. So you can go about all these things. Next, sir. And you also have the knowledge about the distributions, the data which follows. So without understanding the distribution of the data, what the data is follows, whether data is following the T distribution, F distribution, or chi-square distribution, or the binomial distribution, or the different types of the distributions. So these are the theoretical distributions I am explaining here. So you should know, because whatever you are going to test in your research paper while conducting the test, so all these states, whatever the test, they all depends on one or the other distributions. So you should identify what data you are using, what techniques you are using, what data is following the distributions. So without understanding if the data is following T distribution, if you have conducted the F test, then they are mismatched. So therefore, there should not be ambiguity in use of the techniques, use of appropriate techniques. Therefore, you need to understand the nature of the data, and you need to understand what are the techniques which are available to explain or handle this data, and what are the tests which are available to conduct for giving the proof. For that, you need to understand what are the distributional forums we have. Sir, next, sir. And another important thing, if you are using the primary data, what is the size of your primary data? Because you have to write in your research paper how many samples that you have taken, that is observations you have taken for your analysis. Because inadequate sample will also mislead the results. So therefore, you have to use a sufficient adequate sample size or the observation to explain the issue. So otherwise, the results which you have obtained, they may not be acceptable, reliable. They may be spurious. We use the word spurious. They looks like very good, but they are not really good. So that's called spurious results, and we call them as unreliable results. So you cannot accept the results. If you want to prove your arguments, that for that you have to have sufficient data. So data, that is adequate data. So generally we use this this formula to determine. By using this formula, the sample size will be 384 with 95% of confidence and 5% of margin of error. So that always for any general analysis, use 384 samples. So next, sir. Sir, next. Yes. So after all this, now we are ready to write the analysis for our analysis for the research article in the form of results and interpretations. So what are the types of the interpretation that we can go? Just you can give the statements. So just to give the statements like there is a difference between male and female, there is a difference between the districts in terms of per capita income, there is a difference in rainfall among the different sorry. You can write like statements. You can also illustrations or reasoning, logically writing the research results, and it should be systematic, and it should be sequencing of arguments. You don't say how many children you have. First you ask the first explain that how many children the couples are having. Then you ask, are you married? Are you male or female? Don't. So it should be in the sequential orders. If you go through any standard articles in the subject matter you have chosen, you will understand what has to be written first and what has to be written next. So it should be, for example, in my area of research, if I talk about the energy and the relationship of energy with the economic development, certainly I will test the stationarity of the data first. After understanding the stationarity or the non-stationarity of the data, then I move about the co-integration models or the ECM models or the RDL models. You should be sequencing. So first you have to write the descriptive kind of the statements. Then you write about the argumentative kind of the arguments, argumentative kind of the interpretations. And as far as possible, write in a very simple way. Don't use too much of adverbs and adjectives to your analysis. It should be very simple and meaningful and understandable. So what are the things we are explaining in the results and interpretation? The first one is status explanation. What is the status of the subject matters? And what are the differences? And what are the reasons for that differences? You write about like that. And what are the relations? I'm not saying you have to use all these things. I am saying these are all the styles, the possible way of writing the results. The one way of writing the results is just to explain the status. Second way of writing the results, that is, if you want to prove the differences, you write about the what are the differences exist in the subject matter taken. And you also write about what are the reasons for that differences. If you are interested in explaining the relationship, and you explain what are the kind of relations, nature of relationship, whether the positive relationship or the negative relationship. You talk about the relations, and you also give the sufficient reasons for that kind of the relations. That's another important thing. So if you are using any models, econometric models or the impact models, then you talk about, so what are the impacts, or what are the slope coefficient explains their positiveness or the negative nature of the coefficient, whether they are positive or negative, whether they are acceptable or not acceptable, meaning whether the coefficients are significant or not significant. And you have to write all those impact analysis if you are using any models. If you are not using anything of that kind, if you are explaining using the non-parametric data and you are using chi-square or something like that, then you have to explain association and its implications. Is there any association between the gender and the marks obtained? Is there any association between gender and wage rate? Is there any association between region like urban, rural, and the results in the SSLC board? So that kind of the association can be explained. And in each of the time when you are using some techniques, that has to be proof giving process. So write about the tested proofs which you have. For example, if you have proved by conducting the test, if you have proved, yes, there is a gender difference in Karnataka in terms of wage rate, then you write like, it has proved that there is a significant gender difference in terms of wage in Karnataka, because you already proved by using the tests. And you also take the help for your arguments from the previous works, So whether what are the previous works which also agree with your argument, the previous works which are agree with your arguments, because you have proved something, the previous works are also proved the same. Then it is necessary to you mention what are the previous works are agree with you, and what are the previous works are not agree with you, how your research work is differing from the previous works. If you are differing from the previous works, then you need to support your argument from your tested proofs, which you have already done. So therefore, it's very, very important to being agreements and disagreement from the previous research works. Sir, next, sir. And in the conclusion part, how should we write the conclusion part? So state what you have done in the article. That's very, very important. That is, slightly if I say it is what objectives you have examined or estimated or analyzed or studied in the present research work. That should be your first line in the conclusion. What you have studied, what you have analyzed. For example, in the present study, the present paper has examined the role of women in the development process, the role of teacher in development process. The present study has analyzed or examined or discussed or estimated the relationship between work and home relations, or the work and home balances or imbalances, something like that. You have to explain one line what the study has examined. And then you have to give 2 to 3 major findings. The major findings that has to be mentioned. What you have proved or what you have not proved, and what the major issues you have analyzed, that has to be explained. And at the same time, the outcome of your research has to be written here in 2 or 3 major findings of your study. And what are the challenges, problems, not writing the paper, that you have identified in the research issue. Okay, not writing the paper, the major challenges or the problems identified or proved in your testing of hypothesis, or in testing processes, what the problems you have identified, that has to be mentioned in the conclusion part. And at the same time, you have to give 1 or 2 suggestions how to solve these problems. Okay. And you also mentions what is the limitations of your study, or instead of that, you can write what is the scope for the future research in 1 line. And you also write the 1 line concluding remarks, 1 line concluding remarks, because it is also very, very important how your research work is applicable for the practical situation, or in the solving the problems, or the ongoing research, current research issues. So therefore, how your paper is useful for the society, for the system, that has to be written at the end of your conclusions. So this is how you have to conclude your paper. The next one is reference. It's very, very important. Use standard format. Always you use standard format. And generally, we have different styles. We have APA style, MLA style. You also have the Chicago style, Harvard style, Mendeley. Recently, now the people are largely using this APA and Mendeley, because APA you have to write on your own. You have to write the references. You have to write the references on your own. Whereas in Mendeley, it is online reference giving techniques. You can download that Mendeley software, and directly that will give you the reference in what style you want. For example, some research articles, journals expects APA style. For example, most of the social sciences and humanities, they follow APA 5 or 6. Whereas the literature, languages, they follow MLA style. So MLA 7, they are very particular about this style, particularly language and literature people. So if you have used MLA 6, they will reject your paper. So they expect you have to use only MLA 7. And all this APA, MLA, Chicago, Harvard, all these styles are readily available in your computer. In your window, when you open a window, so there will be a reference, one submenu in the top of the your laptop or the computer. There is one called reference. You go to reference, so that will open. Once the reference is open, you go to the right side. There is what style you want, the style of the reference you want. So that shows the different styles like APA, MLA, Chicago. Mendeley will not be given in there. So only APA, MLA, Chicago, Harvard, all these, there are 6 to 7 different styles of reference giving. You go and select that style. First you select the style, APA, MLA, whatever it is. After you select the particular, for example, you have selected APA 6. In some softwares they have not mentioned the 6 or 5, but they mention APA. So you go to APA. Once you have selected APA, so what the resource you are going to give as the reference? I mean that, are you going to give the reference for a article, journal article? Are you going to give the reference of a book? Are you going to give the reference for a book section? Are you going to give the reference for the conference proceedings? So everything will be displayed. So in that, under the APA, that will be displayed. You go and select. For example, you are going to give the reference for a research journal article. Then you select that journal article. Accordingly, the submenus will come. What comes first? The name. So the name, author single or the double. If a single author, how to write the author's name? That will be displayed bottom of that submenu. That will be, if the time permits, I could have shown it, because the time restrictions. Yeah, how to give the reference, I thought of how to explain how to give the references, because it's very, very important. So the most of the research articles will be rejected only because of the reference what you have given. They are not in the format. So therefore, giving reference is very important. What I suggest you, go and try with your laptop, go to reference, go to style, APA, something like that, and you select one form of the source whether it is a journal article, book, or a book section, or you can also give dance or the stage show, also even film, movie, that you can also give as the reference. If you want to support some movie for your argument, you can give that reference for the movie. It explains the title of the movie, director, something like that. So it asks, and each time below that submenu where you are giving the references, that shows how you have to input the information, that will be shown. So therefore, it is very, 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 very easy giving reference, but follow only the standard style like APA, MLA. And before publishing, you should know what style the journal is expecting. That's also very, very important. So next, sir. So this is how APA style. It is American Psychological Association. I have given it directly gives. Once you have input the informations, if you go to the bibliography and say insert bibliography, with the order, it gives in the style. You need not to worry about the style. That will give you, but you have to input systematically how it expects, and it will show how you have to give the reference, how you have to input. So next, sir. And then this slide related to the table. So generally we use the different type of the table names, all those things. No, always you have to write for a journal, you have to give the table number like table 1 colon, and then you have to write the title of the table. That's the main. And you also have to write the subtitle, what that the main title is explaining, whether it is explaining the in rupees, in crores, or in dollar, or in numbers, or in percentage, what it really means. That submenu subtitle has to be given, but don't write subtitle, title number, don't write that. That's the only thing I'm explaining here. You have to write like this. The right part of the presentation, see, table 1 colon title, and the bottom of that you write within the bracket in rupees, in numbers, in percentage, something like that. And you can present your information in the table as far as simple, or in the cross-section tables, or whatever the results you have obtained from the SPSS or UVs, you take that results as it is, and you change some of the things which are not necessary according to adjust the table for the word sheet, and then directly you can present the result sheet. For your kind information in SPSS or in the UVs, you can directly edit the table there itself, in the software itself. That's very easy. You can delete something, or you can add something in the software itself, and directly you can copy from there and you can put it here. So then it is very, very important. You have to adjust the table. How you have to adjust? Go to auto fit. That is, the table contents will be fit automatically, and then alignment, it should be center, and positioning, the table should be center. The information in the table should be in the center. At the same time, table itself should be in the center. And don't forget to give the sources for the table, where you have taken the data and how you have taken the data. Or this directly, it is the Ministry of Energy and something like that, Ministry of Rural Development, Ministry of Home Affairs. So from where you have taken the data, or WHO or United Nations, something like that. If you have taken the data from the primary studies, if you have conducted a study, then you write from the field study, data from the field study computed by using specific software, SPSS. Author has computed the results using SPSS. Something like that, you have to give the source, because source is also very, very important. And as far as possible, while giving the source, you give the original source. For example, even the RBI will not give you the original information about the rural development. So rural development information will be basically provided by the Ministry of Rural Development, but you are giving the reference Reserve Bank of India, because you have seen the data in the Reserve Bank portal. You have given Reserve Bank of India. Don't give the reference like that, Reserve Bank of India. Give the original producer of the data, who has really owner of the data. That you have to mention. Sometimes you write some book names where you have taken the data, like in Gupta's book, something like that. Don't write that, because there will be a owner. And when you are giving, you have not taken the data from the internet sources. Even for that internet sources, people like from google.com, something they write, or twitter.com, or the WhatsApp information. Don't write. Even for that, there is a owner who has uploaded that data. Okay, so when you have taken the data from the website or from the internet portals, so some data, definitely there will be a owner who has uploaded originally that data. For example, you get the metadata from the internet, which is basically uploaded by the World Bank. So when you have, then you have to give the reference, the World Bank data. Okay, the source has to be World Bank. It is not the internet information or the internet source, like that. And the graph should be like that. A graph 1 or 2, and then you have to write. As far as possible, the title of the graph should be very short, very short. If possible, 1 or 2 words, 1 or 2 words only. Trends in energy, something like that. Okay, and as far as possible, don't give the subtitle for the graphs, right? So graph type based on data, whether are you using the line graph, bar, pie, star graph, or nowadays we have the multiple multiple graphs, like in single graph you can explain thousands of issues. So now we have that is what you call Google graph creations. There are many techniques which are readily available, which will increase the probability of publishing your research work. So if you follow all these styles systematically, if you follow what are all the styles I have explained here, definitely you have a better chance to publish your article. Sir, next. Some steps I have written here, steps in writing article. So title, tentatively finalize the title, because when you start writing a research paper, you are not directly writing the final version of the title. So just you think of some subject, like it is a sustainable development, agriculture, sustainable employment, sustainable jobs, or the environmental issues, or agriculture, or industry, or education, or health, something like that. You think of some tentative subject, you put it as simple as possible as a title. Don't finalize the title, just you think of. And while selecting that title, in which discipline? Generally, if you belongs to management, you choose a topic related to management. If you belongs to the discipline of economics, certainly you think of a subject, and you choose the topic from the discipline and specific area in economics where you are going to study, whether it is in education or infrastructure or in social capital or in pure economic issues, or where the specific areas. Or for example, are you dealing with the micro issues or the macro issues? So there are the journals which will not publish the micro level studies. They publish only the mainstream macroeconomic issues, like American Economic Review, that will not publish the micro level studies. So like that, it should be a mainstream argument. So therefore, specific area, choosing specific area is also important. Issues with reference to reason. Take 1 or 2 weeks to see how the titles have formed in the previous research work. So review of literature is very, very important. So take 1 or 2 weeks just to see the titles, how they have framed the titles. So while seeing the titles of the previous works, you will understand how to write the title. And then search for the previous work. Where? So in .com, .org, .com, libraries, subject-related websites like RIPEC, Ideas, SSRN, Science Direct, Shodhganga, nowadays elsewhere. If you go and write a word in the search box, you will get lakhs of previous research works related to your topic. As much as possible, you short the search. You short while searching, it should be very close to your chosen research topic. So like whether you wish to have the articles only from 2015 to 2020, or you want to have the papers only from the economics or the econometrics or the management. So it's like that, you have to short the search process. And then identify the works of same kind or related. So 10 to 20 works which are closely related to. While doing the review of literature, you will come across with the plenty of research works, but out of that plenty, you select 10 to 20 which are very close to your paper. So prepare a chart or table for previous works. Okay, what they have proved or what they have disproved, you prepare a chart. Prepare note on each paper. So what it has proved, what data it has used, what methodology it has used, what research outcome it has given. Like that, you prepare a small note for each paper. And identify and group of identical works. Out of 20, so out of 20, 5 maybe have argued the same kind of the issues. So you group them. So you also group them for what data they have, the similar kind of the studies have used, the similar methodologies used by the different research works, the techniques, arguments, findings. What are similarity, having similarity, or you can call them as convergence papers and the divergence papers. What they are agreeing, what they are disagreeing. What they have used the same data, what they have used the different data. One may be using the cross-section data, one may be using the time series data. And then after all this, you prepare first draft of review of literature. First draft of review of literature. So you don't start writing the abstract or writing the introduction. First thing you need to do is writing a draft review of literature. So what the previous works have argued, what they have argued in a identical way, what are the data they have used, what methodology they have used, what are the arguments, what are the conclusions, what are the suggestions. So for that, you prepare a draft. And then you finalize, sir, next, sir. Then you finalize your topic. So once you finalize your topic or the specific topic for your article, so you have to review of literature. You will complete the review of literature, and that will help to writing introduction. And for your information, I want to tell you that while write the introduction, you have to give the references. So if you want to give the references for the introductory part of your research paper, where will you get the information? Once you have completed your review of literature, you will be having 20 references already. So accordingly, you can give the references for your introductory parts. So therefore, your review of literature will help you to writing the introduction, and it also help you to explain the importance of your research issue, because it is already examined by the previous works, and what are the kind of relations I have explained, and the interdependency, causes, consequences, a base for the paper. So after all this, you can write the draft introduction. And then development of research methodology. So that is data. Already you know what data have been used already, what techniques have been used, what models, designs have used. By understanding the previous research works, the data, the methodology, the techniques, you write the draft introduction for the research methodology. So, and then it's also very, very important, make sure the availability of data and where you get the data. So what is the authenticity of that data? So simply you cannot get the data from the internet and use it. So that's not possible. So the data source, it should be adequate, it should be authentic, there should be authenticity for that, and it should be comparability of the data, because in the two different periods they may be used the different methodology to take the data or the construct the data. So therefore the methodology should be same. For example, you cannot compare the two human development reports, because the methodologies used for the two different human development reports are maybe different. If they are common, then it helps you to explain the change. So therefore, it's also important to have the comparability of the data, and the usability of data. As far as possible, get the information from the free sources. Don't go for paying the price for getting the data. Nowadays, data is abundantly available, particularly from the United Nations and its sub-organizations, and from the World Bank and its subsidiary institutions. And like that, in any nations, the government, the ministries of the governments will have lots of data. If you are working on the tourism, definitely the tourism ministry will give you the data. At least they will give you the annual reports, which will consist. If you are working on the sustainable rural development, definitely the Ministry of Rural Development will give you the most authenticated data for your research analysis. Like that, you have a domain data sources. Use the original data source. You take the data from the original data source. So after you have completed these three parts, you have completed review of literature, you have completed introductory part, and you have finalized your methodology, and then directly you can obtain the results. So as far as possible, try to obtain the results on your own. Understand the data, what data you are using, understand what are the techniques already used for analyzing this kind of the data, and you can go to the YouTubes, what type of the techniques can be used for such a situation, for the such data. Or if, for example, somebody has used factor analysis for some issues, in the previous research work, some research author has used factor analysis, principal component analysis has used, but I don't know how to use that. Go to YouTube, how to get the results in SPSS or in AViews, the principal component analysis. That will explain step by step. That will explain. You are no need to worry to get the results. So if you have a software, if you have a patience, go to YouTube, see how to get the results for co-integration, how to get the results for the independent t-test in SPSS or in AViews or in Strata, how to get the results. You go Google it and go to YouTube and ask for that. Definitely you will get the step-by-step procedure. Before that, you read some standard research methodology book. What is the rationale of use of that techniques or that model? So that's very important, obtaining the results. And then once you obtain the results, as far as possible, you can present the data in the two form. One is the table form and one is the graphical form. So graphical form, it is very much helpful because the lot of data can be presented in the single graph. So, but you cannot present the data as it is in the table format. For example, from 1951 to 2020, 70 years of data. If you want to present that data in the table, you need minimum 3 to 4 pages. Instead of that, in the form of graph, you can present that just in a quarter of the page. You can present in the line graph. You can present. So at the same time, not only single variable, you can present the multiple variables. You can present 10 variables at a time, right? So like that, you, as far as possible, you present the data or the results in the form of graphs. If the results are the output of some specific models, then you present the results of that model in the form of tables. That's very, very important. And then interpret the results. Even for that, while interpreting, I already explained. Are you explaining the status? Are you explaining the difference? Are you explaining the relations, impact, association? So these are all the things you are going to explain. Okay. So therefore, what you are explaining, that's also very, very important. I have mentioned already. And write the draft analysis, conclude the work. After this, you prepare the abstract. I am coming back again. So now you have completed your paper. Now you can write your abstract. And then while writing the abstract, identify some keywords and give appropriate references. If you are done in this way, definitely you have more chance of publishing your paper. So once you completed your paper, check for all these things. No ambiguity in the title. So there should not be two meanings for the same title. Keywords are given. Need of classification of paper, because it is also very, very important. JLE classification, under what category you are going to publish. Are you going to publish in the L category, Q category, P category? So what category you are going to publish? You have to give that. In the checklist, they ask for that. So what is the category of your paper? That doesn't mean that not specific. So which discipline you are writing paper? If you are writing the paper on energy, definitely it will comes under the P and Q, JLE classification. If you are writing education, it comes under the D or E. Okay, something like that. For each of the title, we have a different classifications. You have to give the classification. What classification that the papers will comes under. And objectives of the paper are concise and clear. At the end of the introduction, you have written the objectives of the paper. Clarity in the abstract. So you are writing something in the conclusion part, but you are contradict to your conclusion in the abstract. That should not be. Both should explain the same thing. Most of the times what we do while giving the paper to the conferences, first we write the abstract. There we will say there is no difference between so and so. But after completing our paper, you are writing, yes, there is a difference. There should not be like that. There should be clarity, logical sequence, and then fulfill whether the objectives of the papers are fulfilled, clarity in the conclusion, tables and graphs are in the appropriate style and position. You need to check, and source references are properly cited. So plagiarism, because nowadays they check for the plagiarism according to UGC guidelines, your paper should not cross 10% of the similar work. Okay, that means 90% of your research paper should be new. Then it's very important to write your paper on your own with all these styles. After all this, how and where to publish it? So nowadays, how means I have already explained. If you follow the steps in writing the research paper, then definitely your paper will be in good style and you can publish. Right. So where to publish? You have a lot of open access journals. You can publish there. You have also print journals, and you also have conference volumes. You can publish in the conference proceedings, or you can publish in the books, ISBN, or in the journals, or latest UGC list. Previously, it was called UGC list under 4 different categories: A grade journals, B grade, C grade, and D grade journals. So previously it was listed like that. Now we have UGC care list, and there are only 2 groups: Group 1 and Group 2. Okay, so here also you can publish. You can use the careless consortium of academic research ethics. Dongre sir was talking about our research ethics and all those things. Ethics is nothing but already checked. Our ethics is already checked. What is that? They have checked it for the plagiarism. If it is not crossed 10%, we will have ethics, research ethics, and we are not publishing others' work. We are publishing our own work. That is the ethics, research ethics, nothing else. And under the UGC care list, in the Group 1 journals, we have different categories like science, social science, arts and humanities, multidisciplinary, and Indian languages. So under social sciences we have. Under the Group 2, we have 2 sections. One is the Web of Science, and another one is the Scopus source list. And each Web of Science, we have almost 60 plus thousands of different chances of publishing. Under the Scopus, we have 41,000 different chances to publish. So you can see the availability of the journals. And this is UGC care list. I have shown some of the journals where you can publish. Under the social sciences, we have 314. Under the list 1, not in the list 2. Under the list 1 for social sciences, we have 314. Under the list 2, you have more than 2,000. You have more than 2,000. And open access, you have more than 6,000 different journals. Because you can publish all over the world. Open access, you have 6,000. Sir, next, sir. Shortage of time. Going to little speed. So use a care list again. It's the end of that one. Sir, next, sir. Check where you can access Scopus remotely through your institution. So you can Google it and you can get Scopus journals. You are all interested in publishing Scopus journals. There are plenty, 2008 different, for social sciences only I'm explaining this. Sir, next, sir. How to reach UGC approved list of journals? 4 steps are there. You follow the steps. The very thing is you need to register for that. Go to the UGC website, register for that by giving your name, your email address, and the phone number and the address. You can register. Once you have registered, you can go to login site. Once you log in, that asks for your email address and the password. So what the password you have given, with that password, you can log into the UGC website. Once you log in, next, sir. Like that, this page will appear and search for, and under the category 1, you can search for like this, and the category 2, sir, next, sir. So you can go to the same thing, what I have already shown, I'm showing systematically by going from University Grants Commission, you can go like this. So you can go for that, sir, next. So open access journals, previous. Open access journals, there are 6,324 results are available, meaning that amount of journals you have to publish. Next, sir. And care list for each of economics. For economics, I have taken this. Next, sir. Indian journals are also there, and international. So, sir, next, previous one. To what extent you can go to a particular paper? Through UGC website, you can go to a particular paper. To that extent, you can access. So, next, last. References, I thought of explaining you how to give, but I have explained already. So, next. Thank you. Sorry, I have taken at the end, before I conclude, if I could have been able to make you thought of start writing a research paper, I don't know, you have to take.
Sir, it was really a wonderful and informative session. And the kind of the feedback from the live chat we are getting on the YouTube link, they're all asking your presentations. So whatever that you have put in the presentation to St. Philomena's College, I hope we can share that among all the participants. Yeah. So
Definitely you can share, sir.
the fact is the professor is more generous on this issue, and that is why he has come all over here. That shows his inclination, that shows his love for our institution. Professor, those who are doing the research and all, they have undergone the 6 months of coursework, and they undergo a lot of learning. But in a nutshell, within this 1.5 hours, you have handled this session so meticulously, and the art of writing a research article and publishing it, the meticulous steps that you have put in is so informative, and there is a lot of learning, and also the avenues where it can be published. You have meticulously shown the UGC care listed, and where they can go and search the publication domain where they want to put in their subject-oriented articles. So it was really wonderful, sir. And few of they are talking about how many literature review should be we have to select for an article. That is what they are asking about, some particular number that is from Commerce and Management, madam. So around professor says for a research article it will be around 20 or 20, less than 20 research article will be enough for that. So then the other participants are congratulating you, thanking you very much on the kind of the discourse that you have done today. So really it is very happy because we wanted especially a focus on how they can write an article, and UGC posing this challenge of in the care listed journey should be published. So if every researcher, every faculty follow these steps that you have mentioned, I think there is no fear in there that their article will be accepted by all the leading publishers. So thank you very much, Professor. So on behalf of St. Philomena's College, on behalf of IQAC, we thank you very much and look forward to one is the another important domain that you mentioned, the references. So the kind of style that you require. So that is an intricacies involved, because after publishing a research article, how my research article is cited. Yes, so citation metrics becomes important. So what is the H index that I have? What is the I10 index that I have? So regarding that, we have the next session. I think that is the flow that we have done is for this all one-day workshop is in view of this objective. So professor has clearly given us that thought how we can move forward and get the exactly the research metrics, that is citation metrics. So thank you once again on behalf of St. Philomena's College and on behalf of research committee. We thank you very much, Professor. Now over to Professor Dr. Rina Francis for further instructions.
Coutinho sir, for briefing on the second session that we had. Now we shall break for lunch and we'll be joining back sharp at 2 o'clock. And we request everybody to go on the YouTube link. Thank you so much.